ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizers of the Monsoon Fellowship, where we learn to safeguard Goa's lands through the communal system, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you gathered here today at the Savio Center for Historical Research. This fellowship has been designed as a space to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and strengthen our understanding of the Goan Gunda system, an integral part of our land, heritage, and identity. So there are two very important things before we go ahead. First, I'd like for all of you to rise in your seats for the Gaunkaries anthem, followed by a prayer.
Ami Gaunkar, ami Goenkar, ami nisput goinche, कोणी दुस्मान पुढे आयल्यार आलचे नांवांक सोडले, देवान जमीन आमकां दिल्या, आदल्या निती सांबाळून दवरल्या. देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव, मायदेस आमी राखताव, शेतां वोंपून पोट भोत्ताव, दोंगर आपणां आयताव, मोरों पासून सोदांच तोयार माडां सावळेन जियेताव. देवान जमीन आमकां दिल्या, आदल्या निती सांबाळून दवरल्या. देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव, मायदेस आमी राखताव. आलचे नांवांक सोडले, देवान जमीन आमकां दिल्या, आदल्या निती सांबाळून दवरल्या. देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव, मायदेस आमी राखताव, शेतां वोंपून पोट भोत्ताव, दोंगर आपणां आयताव, मोरों पासून सोदांच तोयार माडां सावळेन जियेताव. देवान जमीन आमकां दिल्या, आदल्या निती सांबाळून दवरल्या. देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव, मायदेस आमी राखताव. देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव, मायदेस आमी राखताव.
Okay, so let us take a moment to invoke God's blessings before we begin. I'd like all of you to bow your heads for this. Almighty God, we thank you for bringing us together this morning. We pray for your blessings on today's fellowship, on our speakers, and on all participants present here. May our discussions be fruitful, our minds open, and our hearts receptive. May we take home wisdom that will guide us to safeguard and nurture our land and heritage. Bless the food or the snacks that we eat, the fellowship today, and the spirit of learning today. Amen. You all may now kindly take your seats. A few pointers before we go ahead. The washrooms, in case anyone needs to use the washroom, is to my right through this door, and there are signboards that will guide you to the washroom. There are washrooms on the ground floor as well. In case you all have not received your snack coupons, please get them or collect them at the registration counter on the ground floor, where you also need to either register yourself or confirm your attendance. Having said that, we now come to our first session. We have with us Mr. Marlon Rodrigues, who is a Gaunkar of Anjuna, Kumdad. He was born in Goa, spent 30 years in Canada, and came back to Goa 2 years ago to administer his family's estate. Marlon is a startup mentor and co-team member of Armchair.in, a volunteer organization helping residents of Goa bring context to their village through accessible maps that has served 3,000 users since its launch last year and continues to serve the people. Marlon will now guide us on how modern technologies can enhance governance and land resource management within the Comunidad framework. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Marlon Rodrigues. Please give him a big round of applause.
Good morning. As you can tell, the power has gone off, so we are going to run the projector on the inverter. If you give us a second to let that come up. It's so nice to spend time with all of you here today on a steamy Sunday. Hopefully you found a fan that is still spinning. Otherwise, feel free to move yourselves. I have about 45 minutes here with you. We'll take a small break, and then there's a panel. And I just have a couple of slides here to help us guide the conversation. And my goal here today is to impart with you some tools that may help you in the conversations you're already a part of. There may be some advocacy that you're doing. You may even just be trying to understand for yourself some of the conversations that are going on. And so I'd encourage you, at any point you have a question, please stop me. I'll do my best to answer from here. The questions I can't answer from here, I'll take with you later. And we do have a legal panel coming later, so the legal questions I'm going to leave to them, okay? This photo, by the way, is not a stock photo. When I came back to Anjuna, I had a lot of paperwork to work through, and in some cases, stacks of photographs. And so, as you heard, I grew up in Canada, and there's a reporter from Canada that said, this is unusual. Typically people are migrating to Canada. There was a time. But why are you here? Why is this important to you at this stage of your life? And so they told this story. I can share a link with you sometime. And in the process of talking to her, I was rifling through some of these pictures. She took this picture, and it didn't mean anything to me in that moment. I didn't recognize these people, though I recognized my own hands. I sent this picture to my parents, to my family in our group chat on WhatsApp, and my dad said, "That's me. That's my godmother holding me." And so in these little moments, I realized the connections that I'm making and reconnecting with are deeply seated, As much as I spent time in Canada, and I've gotten a chance to travel around the world, there's no place that I am more at home than our home in Anjuna. I'm a Canadian citizen. I've lived in Costa Rica and Bali and Portugal. I grew up in Abu Dhabi. But day to day, I'm spending time drinking the water my great-grandmother drank, eating the mangoes my great-great-grandfather planted. I was washing a pot the other day, and there's names of my ancestors etched onto these objects. And so as much as I can travel, and I've enjoyed my life in all these other places, that sense of home will never come back like the way it does when I'm in Anjuna. These are two pictures of the same steps. These are the main steps of our house. On the left, that's me dangling, and those are my two sisters. Now, those were simpler times. This is the 90s, about 30 years ago. My grandparents were alive. The village was much quieter, and it was an idyllic time to be a child, cared for by grandparents, surrounded by community, doing the little things that kids want to do, playing in the fields, chasing after dogs, being fed copious amounts of food. On the right is a few months ago when I brought two babas home and reestablished our home, becoming the 5th generation to occupy our house. Now, in that time, I've gotten a chance to do a lot of things. But what I realize in being back on our land, and you may feel this as well, is there's nobody that cares for the land as much as the indigenous people that come from it. And that was true of every place I was around the world. And so there's a sense of responsibility to take up not only the day-to-day issues of the family and the personal life, but also to do something, to stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before me. For those of you that are from Bardes, my grandfather, Joe Rodrigues, was the Comunidad president. For those of you that spend time in the charismatic movement, my uncle Mervyn is still there on the same road. I could not have the connection I have today in Anjuna and in our community had these men not done what they did in their lifetime to conserve their communities, to espouse their values. I would come in as a foreigner, which maybe you hear my accent. I'm working on it. I've taken Konkani lessons, but all I seem to do is eat copious amounts of potoyo. I'm working on the Konkani if anyone wants to help me. But it feels like a tradition, a family tradition, to do this work. One of the other things that really stuck with me in being back in Goa, as much as I care about the issues, is really hard to understand. And you may also feel this. Sometimes it's a language gap. Sometimes it's a history gap. Even a basic thing like directions. When somebody says to you, go down the road and then turn right near the convent and left near the old bakery and then go down and up, I'm lost. I'm an AirPod and Google Maps kind of guy. And so a lot of the conversations that were around me, I couldn't make sense of in my first year. In my second year, I kind of got annoyed, I built a bunch of businesses in Canada, in San Francisco, and typically when you get to this point of frustration, you say, well, could we do something better? Or is there something better? And so with a group of people here based in Goa, we started having this conversation and saying, could we understand these conversations a little bit better? And what would we do if we could put our collective mind together to create something just for us, just to understand the conversation a little bit better? Now, the beautiful thing is Goa is a very small place, but there's so many highly qualified people here that you really just have to ask. And so among a few of us, we realized we had the complementing skills, and there's a moment in time in technology right now where the people can do something they've never been able to do before this. That is, that they can create technology, knowledge, sharing that allows them to enter a conversation on par with the establishment, government agencies, highly qualified, highly specialized professions that exist. And so what we did with our time is we built Amche, which is something you can open on your phone right now. This is a web-based app, amche.in. It is named purposely because this is ours. We built this. This is our technology. We own the domain name. This is not a private enterprise. Nobody has come in, no NGO, no government has asked us to do this. This is something that's bubbled up from us to say, we want to understand things better. And so what can we do? And this is what we did. So far, 3,000 people have used this application, and we've been in service less than a year. In fact, I announced this on the other side of this room in October, when we had 4 maps. Today we have more than 40. And what I'll tell you is that we're not some, out there people. We don't own satellites or anything like this, but we've done what we could do, which is to bring together the information that already exists in different departments, sometimes in your own notes, and collate them onto one web-based interface so that you can come to understand things in context, so that you don't lose the thread of a conversation, or you don't lose the context of what you're trying to do. Has anyone heard of Amche before today? A couple of people, very nice. Does anyone recognize this map on the right of the slide? Very good, a couple people, excellent. For the rest of us, this is the landslide risk of Goa. This indicates the slopes across the entire state. Of course, it's not the only data point to dictate landslide risk, but this is the type of information that should exist in your hands so that you can understand the risks, but the potential of the place that you live. I'll also encourage you, if you are so determined or if you're connected to folks, that this is not meant to be a small app held closely by a couple of people for our own efficacy. We are doing this for us. And so if you have resources, development, design, even just a second set of eyes that wants to contribute to something like this, anything we do and put into the commons is something we can all use. Okay? So I'll spend a moment here. I'll take you into the mobile application or mobile website. I'll show you the desktop website. You may see this on your mobile website. It's the exact same. And you should also know this is a 100% uptime tool, right? Sometimes the tools that we're given don't really work, or you got to pay for them, or you need to download special software. This you can open up any time of day in your bed or starting from a WhatsApp conversation. And so I'd encourage you to do that. So this is what you'll first see. This is our little state. I'll show you a little bit of navigation here so you know how to come back to the things that matter. On the right side, importantly, is a share button. So anything you see on the screen here, you can drop a link to anyone else, or you can take this link and put it in your own files and return back to the same map with the same layers. And a lot of times we get into these WhatsApp conversations and people are saying things, but what are they talking about? And how can I understand that? So imagine you're in a WhatsApp conversation and you say, I know exactly where that is. I'll open this up, I'll grab the link and enter it into the conversation, thereby improving the quality of the conversation and allowing for people to coordinate around the topic. The next pieces here are GPS. So in the case of your mobile website, you can be standing somewhere and hit this GPS button and see where you are. Now, one of the things we've done that does not exist anywhere else is we have geo-referenced the entire regional plan of the state, all 200 plus tiles, into one place on a satellite map. We've also brought the cadastral, the plot, the survey number map onto the same place. So something as basic as understanding the survey number of your plot or the plot beside you, which might have been a runaround conversation, is now something that you can take part in immediately. This is something you can do in 1 minute. That might have taken conversations or going to Pato or something like this. Our goal is not to claim that we've got the final information required to do the work you need to do, but it's to shorten the cycles and to improve the quality of the conversation so that you can do more of the work that matters and don't get lost in these little things. Okay? The next thing down here is sometimes you get lost in the state itself. And this just allows you to bring the whole state back into perspective. So you never feel shy to zoom in and move around and really bring context. You can always hit this button and see the whole state exactly like this and start again. Then these things are quite common. These are pinch and zoom type things. So on your mobile phone, maybe you're doing this gesture. I might do that gesture here. But this allows you to feel more confidence as you're moving around. And then finally, this is your North Star. This allows you to reorient and see where north is. Okay. The next thing here is this is our map layer tile. This is really important because this allows you to open up more than 40 layers of maps that exist. If you're curious about whether we have a map, I encourage you to open up this side menu and check. You can use the search bar to type in a few words. You can scroll it yourself. And the beautiful thing is, because we've brought this all into the same place, is you can layer them. And I'll show you an example of how powerful that is when you start to use it for the conversations that you're in. It's as simple as flicking these little toggles, which then layers more and more of these maps. You close it, and you can see now all the different layers of maps georeferenced in the same place. Now, maybe the issue you care about is the forest cover, private forests. This is the layer that might help you to understand that. Maybe you care about regional plan. In Anjuna, we care a lot about this road widening thing. Now, it's been there on this PDF or PNG image, but when you start to bring it into context, you can understand how that's going to affect you, how much of a compound is going to be taken up, where actually this road is going to go, and how wide it's going to be, right? Because there are different distances. And then, of course, you've got the satellite map itself. And a lot of people ask us about the satellite map. Now, we're using open source free tools. These are very good. These are very recent. But it's not so current that we can say, take the screenshot of this and you're done. Something like the satellite map is a composite of many other images, which allows you to bring context. But if you want to know what happened 3 months ago, it's best that you use this context and go back to your village and see it for yourself. There's nothing like ground truthing. Or you might use a complementing tool like Google Earth. and see what that time-lapse function has. Okay? There's no nodding, so I'm not sure. It's all going in, though. It's percolating, you know? All right. So let me show you something as basic as the regional plan. So in this case here, you can change it in terms of prominence, so you can decrease it in opacity so you can see something else more clearly. But recall here, we've got this GPS, right? So here we are on the regional plan. Now imagine you wanted to ask yourself about the survey number. Tap on the cadastral. It'll take a minute to load, but you see that these plot numbers are all here. So a simple question like what survey number, what zoning am I in, or what's the zoning of the place I care about, is something you can answer in the moment, right? With the best possible information we have from across the state. And this is a web-based tool, so as we get better information, we'll update it. This is the regional plan from 2021. I'm told they're gonna create another regional plan. When we have that, we will bring that in here. But for now, this is the best we have. Now, if you click on one of these survey numbers, and now that's gonna show a little bit small, but on your phone, you'll see this more clearly. We're bringing in all the context here. So you can see this plot is 17.3. Maybe I'll be able to read it on my screen. And it's in Bardes, and the survey number is 177, and there's other, so these are things that you need for forms. I was at a wedding a few months ago, and even the hotel did not know their own survey number to pay the collector for the noise allowance. They put 1, 2, 3, ABC, and finished. I was like, well, if it was that easy, why did you ask, right? But here you can answer with real facts. And that might be a basic thing that you need to do. Now, a little bit more on the advanced side. I'll show you how something that becomes like kind of a complicated conversation So I'm going to turn off a few of these things here that were like, meh, maybe we'll come back to it, maybe we won't, right? So again, I've drilled into some place, but I want to look at this whole state. I'll click on this, I see the whole state and all the context with it. We've done our best to bring layers in Goa, but there's some data sets that exist for all India. So if you zoom around, you might find that there is information outside our boundary maybe you care about, like this Made River diversion is something we care about, the part that's in the state, but also where the water comes before it hits these diversion points. But fundamentally, we're trying to give you the context here. Now see, one of the conversations I was getting stuck up on is this whole like Rish Magosh thing, right? And I can see it from across the bridge and people are saying, what are they doing? And it used to be green and all these things. And you know, we realize that many of you have been here a long time and so you understand the full history of who was the Sarpanch and which truck and who fought that issue last. But for many of us that haven't been here or that want to join the advocacy, this is the way to bring the conversation forward and bring everyone to the same point evenly. But the beauty of this now is you have pictures, right? I'll just exaggerate one aspect of this. Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you. And so now you go from a conversation that might have been vague and we've lost a lot of people in, and again, just using your fingers, you can start to tilt this map and move it around. This is like a video game. Now we've exaggerated this to make the point, but this red part here is indicating the slope of the terrain. We've brought in mapping data from ISRO, which is our space agency, and NASA, which is a global space agency. And so a simple conversation like, hey, why are people so annoyed? Now you can actually explain, hey man, it's a slope. You know, the best we have is that this is why people are annoyed, is they're building on slopes. It's not just me saying it. You don't have to be a professional surveyor to do this. This is the best possible data we have. And then here's also the context of what we're saying. Yes, they're doing things on a slope, but what does that mean? Well, look, there are other people at the base of this slope. Right? What happens to these places? And if you remember that picture I showed you on the slide, about 70% or so of Goa is supposedly under landslide risk. And so now you see how you can thread together different aspects that you might care about. And it's not just, hey, this is something I want to see. I want to see the green trees. But this is material. This is going to affect us in the long run. This is going to affect our neighbors. And you can bring this to life by showing it in pictures. Now, another thing that you might care a little bit about is as you collect your information and inheriting from the 40 plus layers of data that we've collated so far, these pink splotches are Comunidad land. This is from Saligao, and this is from Gotland. They've given us the survey numbers, and because we have the cadastral map geo-referenced, we can present this back to you, right? So this is an aspect of you participating. We're not asking you to become developers here, but we're saying if you bring this information forward, you can use this as a community resource and maybe do some planning, right? But the beauty of it is you're getting all the other context, where the water bodies are, where the rivers are, what the regional plan is, and how that intersects with the land holdings that you have today, at least as it's indicated on the Comunidad, as it's indicated where the Comunidad is listed on Bunaksha. Has everyone been on Bunaksha? At some point, Bunaksha is where you see the land records and who is the stated owner or tenant. There's some other stuff in here that maybe you want to play around with, and I deeply encourage you to do this. In fact, as we do demos in the community, what we advise is that each group of people, whether it's Comunidad or Panchayat or any other interest group, has somebody that actually takes the time to understand what we have, what resources we have through this type of tool. It doesn't take a long time, maybe an hour. We've tried to do this in like 10 minutes. But as you start to get into more intricate conversations, you can bring better information into the conversation and use it for your forward planning, okay? And because this is ours, you can believe that it's going to be up and it's going to improve. And in fact, if you give us feedback, we will improve in the direction that becomes helpful to you. Okay? Now, what does that mean for you? The language may vary a little bit. What I'm told is that historically there were two types of documents in the hands of the Comunidad, and some of those things may exist still in your offices, maybe in the management committees, and maybe also at DSLR. The things that you should think a lot about is part one, the tombo. The tombo is two parts. It is your planta, it is your map. It's a hand-drawn map, but it is quite good. And so if you're able to find your planta, what we can do, we can work with you to place it on Amche, which allows you to see the historical record of what was there, right? It's not geo-referenced down to the centimeter as we can do nowadays, but the lay of the land is there. The second part of the tombo is the register. What plots were there, right? Which plots were meant to be allocated for the community's use. The second one is tombo 2, the assignment of the plots. Now, this becomes a contentious conversation, but these records exist. They exist somewhere, or they existed at some time. And now what you may want to do, because we're in this historical moment, right? We may argue that there were moments before this that were more important, but this one feels like a lot of people are emotionally invested to make sure that they see that the Comunidad lands follow the original value system in which they were designed. And again, the indigenous people are likely to be the ones to take best care of their land. The way you may take this work on is you may work with your Comunidad to reconstruct the notes. I know that exists in paper in many cases, but that's what we have. So see what you can do to image them. Many times now, your smartphone is good enough to create a high resolution scan or PDF. Digitize this stuff. It goes missing, there are termites and black mold. Believe me, we've lost a lot of paperwork in our family, and you may have lost paperwork in your community, but there might be something, and that at least creates some basis for your understanding. The second thing is to go to DSLR and persistently ask for these documents. There are some administrative fees, and yes, you have to show up in person, But some comunidades have done this. And there was a snapshot in time, like the 60s or 70s, but the DSLR asked for all the comunidades information, and they had it imaged. Now, this is very sensitive information, so they may be a little hesitant to give it to you. In fact, I'm told that even the staff members of DSLR cannot access this. But if you are from your comunidad, if you have high authority to access this, and you're doing this on behalf of your community, you should be able to break through. This background image is a reconstructed planta from a comunidad near Anjuna. And I've seen other plantas, so I know this is possible from DSLR. There are a few more pieces required, so DSLR, these are giant table-sized maps. DSLR has taken them into individual pages, so there's some massage work to reconstruct this, but it becomes part of your historical record. This is something you will not slip backwards on. Now there's a lot of aonoko, and I'm trying to remove that from our language because somebody knows. It's not like collectively none of us can know. Somebody knows, and if we can do the work to bring it to the center of the table and reconstruct it, work through some of these exercises in trust and realize we're in this together, we can create a legacy of document management and archive that we can use going forward to do the work required to administer our comunidades. The last part is a little more tedious, but it is worth doing, and this may be for folks that are feeling like, this computer thing, I don't really know it, But if you're on Bunaksha, if you know that somebody has been, you can go into the Bunaksha record and even manually take down your Form 1 and 14 or write down the survey numbers that still state that comunidad is the occupant. That allows you to have an index that again is snapshotted in time, but if you entrust us with that, we can start placing this on the map for you. And this becomes a conversation. I know a lot of this creates anxiety in the comunidades because it says, wow, we're gonna have a lot of information come up all at once. But the trajectory of technology is transparency. It will all come to light eventually. And better we're doing it proactively rather than chasing records because somebody is coming and we have no basis for the claim we're trying to make. And what we'll offer as a service is any guidance that you need to bring this into a mapping environment that then becomes useful to all of you. So it doesn't just live as one document or black and white, but it becomes a high-res picture with all of the other context that you have here. Okay? The beautiful thing here is we have people in the room that want to help. So we're here, amche.in, Amche on Instagram. It's not a pretty page yet, but we're gonna work on it. In fact, if you call or message on this WhatsApp number, it will also come to us. And so we want to make it really easy for you to ask the questions you need to, because our hope is, this is 100 people, but you represent tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So if you take this information in and you start to share it in your community and you make this the new basis of conversation, which I can hear a little bit as there's a generational shift in our communities, this becomes how we talk about things. Right? We say, show me the data, share a link, show me a screenshot. And so we want to make it easy for you to understand so that you take this into your communities and make this the basis of your communication. We also have someone in the room, Daryl Costa. Hi, Daryl, who you may have seen on YouTube and Instagram. Daryl came back as well. He's from the Arpora and Giri communities, and he built Ask Pedro. And Ask Pedro is tracking these land conversion notifications in the 12 Goan daily newspapers. I'd encourage you to use these tools because it becomes really hard to keep track of all this paperwork. But we have started building tools that allow you to take advantage of modern technology to ease this. Daryl is in the room. Go to his website, go to Instagram, talk to Daryl, or just grab Daryl by the shirt and ask him. Because this will simplify record keeping, record monitoring for your own family, but also for the comunidad. And there will be no lapse in notification to reaction. Okay. Third person who could not make it here today is Malcolm Alfonso. Malcolm has built a world-class drone and advanced mapping technology company in Margao. And he is being called on left, right, and center by people that want to take up the next iterations of Goa. He's very sophisticated. And he may be someone you engage with when you're ready to do some sort of forward planning. The type of technology he has in Goa is world-class. And the types of conversations he can have with you about boundaries or soil composition and water resources is second to none. We work very closely with him, and we want to make sure too that you understand that this is Goins building technology to solve our issues. We don't have to go out of state. You don't have to go and Google anybody. You can go through the network like many of the things here in these communities do. But I encourage you to take up some part of this mission, even just to become familiar with these tools, because as you're in a conversation where it becomes relevant, you can drop the link or at least vouch that these things exist. So you don't exist in that lapse, right? Or miss out on the enthusiasm that people have to take care of their communities. Deo Berakoro. I think we have a moment for questions. Does anyone have a burning question they want to ask right now in front of everybody? Hi. Do you want to, sorry, I don't know if there's a microphone that goes back there. Yep, microphone's coming. Sure.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. Is Bunaksha an official government site?
Is Bunaksha an official government site? Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, in this Bunaksha, there have been a lot of allegations. In fact, it has come up in the assembly that a lot of alterations have been made. So how are all these alterations made, and how is it possible to make these alterations without authority?
How are they making alterations to the Bunaksha records?
One minute. I have a second question.
Sure.
In this mapping, if you go through this Bunaksha, there are certain areas which are shown as, without record, not registered, meaning ownerless.
Yeah.
So does this directly come under the X.C.H.R and Bonaventure bill to be taken over by the government? These are my two questions.
Yeah.
That's all.
I don't have an answer for you on that. There are some lawyers here that I encourage you to chat with. Anyone else? One more? Just here.
Yeah, I just had a question on what is the license for amchi.in? Is it open source? When you say open source, is it GPL, yes. BSD, what is it?
Full unlicensed. You can take it, copy it.
So you can make a fork of it. It's hosted on GitHub?
100%, it's on GitHub.
Okay.
So if you go into, so I skipped this part here, but if you click on source here, this is the entire code.
Okay.
So we're not keeping anything proprietary. Because these aren't our maps, we're creating references for everything, but also the code itself. And as we improve it, it's all coming posted here. You can in fact join the conversation if there's something you have you want to extend it programmatically. You can ask this in GitHub as well.
Okay. Yeah, and another thing I had was with respect to OneMap GIS. Are you pulling any data from OneMap GIS or Bhuvnaksha, or how are you pulling that?
Yes.
Are there open source APIs that the government has provided, or it's something from behind the scenes, or?
There are, okay, so if you see here any of our mapping layers, we have sourced it, right? So you can see with anything here, you know where we got it from. And in some cases, yeah, the government makes it available. In other cases, somebody else has made it available because it was, it's like a hidden API or something, but it's an API, it's meant to be used. And then we are reflecting that information on our tool.
Why I asked this question basically was just piggybacking on what Agnel Bab said with respect to, like, if you're getting data from Bhuvnaksha,
yeah.
And as he said, there are some survey numbers that they don't have a data set itself for.
Yeah.
Right? No information at all. So, I mean, that could be a risk of if you're getting that data set would then lie into this map.
Yeah.
So it's kind of repeating what the government would say. I think the option there would be like to filter that data set and reach out to people like Komdadav Shinshini or whatever and get that data put in, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and there is a mechanism to file and to get any corrections made. It's a bit tedious, but we know that people are doing it.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial. So I am in IT, so I know a little bit of this,
Great.
but I think for the common person to know how to do that is what I think you should be
Yes.
spending a little 5 to 10 minutes on.
Yeah.
That would be helpful for
So
everyone
come
here.
and chat with me, and we'll
Okay.
talk about how to approach that.
Okay, fine. Now, what I was saying is if you could share that with everyone here, I
Yeah.
mean, because not everyone is as tech savvy as, I mean, it's a fact, right? So, I mean, at least what's the easiest method, like step by step, if you could have a document being sent out to the WhatsApp group in terms
Yeah.
of how to feed data into this.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Yes, so let's take that up because we'll need to figure out where to put it. Most people aren't asking for these edits, they're sort of noting an error, and then they're saying, how do I correct for this error? And we can give you some guidance on that. We don't have the prescription written up here, but we can make that available. We can share with you what other people have done to correct. There is a mechanism, but maybe not widely known. One more? Yep.
I agree with the gentleman there. We are not tech savvy, but after meeting you, we had a good conversation. So, for example, Asagaon, we don't have the plantas as yet, right? So, in case we do get them in hand, we can approach you for you to put them up online, correct?
We can work together. I can help you
Absolutely.
to georeference them, or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know how to do that, that's
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
to answer that gentleman's question, Agnel Bab, obviously Boom Naksha and all is not governed, it is just a referral website.
Yes.
Hence we are doing this.
Yes.
Hence we need the cadastral plans, and then we have to cross-reference with
Yes.
plans before cadastral plan.
Yes.
So, like he said, in the future, or maybe we'll chat later, to help smaller comunidades who don't have the funds or don't have a team like us,
Yeah.
I will get to that personally with you. So I
Great.
just wanted to clarify
Yes.
the non-IT people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for offering that.
Thanks.
Towards the front. Yep.
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
I'm Vigilia. I would like to know that most of the comunidades, they may be having their full planters of the full village. But what about those comunidades which do not have the planter? How do we get those records? Or maybe some parts or some planters are missing.
Yeah. So what I'm told, and this will take some persistence, is that all plantas are at DSLR, the Department of Survey and Land
Land
Records
Records.
Registry. And you may have to be persistent about this, but in a moment in time, they had all of these imaged.
The thing is that I have tried for my village and I
Yes.
didn't get them at the DSLR. That's why I would like
They've
to.
said they don't exist.
Pardon?
They said they don't exist.
Their parts are there.
Yeah.
Most of the important parts that we went to look out for are not available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's discuss this in person because we have some people that have figured out how to
Yeah.
get
Thank
a
you.
second opinion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Some more? Hi.
Yeah, excuse me. I don't know if this question pertains to you, but if you see today computerized survey plans, you know, in the olden days, wherever a line turned, there was a dot. Yeah. Today there are no dots. The line just keeps going. So if there is a minor shift, you don't know whether there is a shift or not.
Yeah.
So I don't see that there seems to be a degradation in plans. It's because of computerization.
You're talking about the precision of the boundary?
Yeah, precision means whenever a line turned before, there used to be a dot.
Yeah.
Line, dot, the next line.
Huh.
Now there are no dots. The line just keeps going. So if there is a minor shift, you don't know whether, you know. And the second even worse thing is that if you ask for a survey plan where there is an abutting road, the road is not shown. And I was told that is because the computer is given a command, say survey number 15/6.
Yeah.
Computer doesn't know what's happening outside.
Yeah.
So it's very bad, no? Because architects need to know the road width existing so that they show the road widening.
Yes.
Those things have to be, unless you ask for both the side properties.
Yes.
And then they give you the road.
There is that aspect. The other is to use this as guidance to figure out what you want to further study and work with a surveyor or a drone operator to get some precision, a current snapshot with GPS coordinates and a timestamp about what exactly you need. I wouldn't say this is the final answer. Don't use this and build your house.
Yeah.
Right? But come into understanding and say, okay, this is the best I have from my seat, and now I'm going to transform this place, and I need to deeply understand all of this. Use it as notes to take into the field.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Victor Gonsalves.
Hi.
The survey of 1971 shows a specific plan without showing what is comunidad and what is the private. The comunidad was shown as a revenue department, and the collector is a revenue officer. Collector is not an administrator. So today collector decides all comunidad properties, all comunidad conversions, all comunidad assets which are here. So is the collector has powers as a revenue officer or a collector?
That's out of the scope of what I can answer for you. But there are a few lawyers, including a legal panel, coming up. I keep that question for them.
Because Form 3 is converted into Form 14.
Yeah.
The 14 decided by the Mamladar.
Yeah.
So he is a revenue officer. And collector is a revenue collector. So
Yeah.
he cannot be called as an administrator and a collector together.
I would take a better qualified opinion about this question so that you have something you can work with.
Yeah, I have a specific question. Because collector is only administrator. He looks after the security and protection of Goa.
Yeah.
And here he is given a powers, not powers given to him, but he acts as a revenue officer and revenue collector.
Right.
That is to be questioned.
Right. It's a worthy question. I just want to make sure you get a good answer that you can use.
No, that is because the revenue and the collector is
Yeah.
two different.
Yeah, and there are lawyers in the room, and there is a legal panel. I would ask them
And the
that.
survey says,
Yeah.
Form 3 is converted into 14. 14 doesn't mean that you are a owner.
Right. Any other? One
Before
more?
we take up further questions, please note that what Marlon has done, he's introduced a technology or a tool for you all to understand and how you all can use it. The legal questions can be asked before our legal experts in the next session. So please try to stick to.
I want to put a question here regarding, you spoke about Tombo, Planta, and another document is auctioning of the properties of the comunidad, which was done prior to 1964, I think, to Tenancy Act. Many times in the administrator of central zone, I'm talking about central zone, the documents are eaten by either termites, and when the building was very bad shape, rain came and destroyed most of the documents. Now if you go to see, check those documents, we don't get proper trace of that. We cannot locate and it become complete shambles. Now how to revive those documents is a big problem. I tried, and I for my Mopican,
Yeah.
and I could not get it.
Right.
Not noticeable.
Right.
It's a big problem because all the documents now are in this Tombo, Pranta, and auction. Auction also is very important because this land was given for auction. So this way, most of our comunidades are getting wiped out. Comunidad properties are getting wiped out
Right.
in favor of other person.
Right. The question is, how do we reestablish the auction records?
Yes.
Great question. I would go back to this. We can talk to you and share what
It's
other
very
comunidades have
important
found,
question because
but it's
documents are
not
in-
something we've been able to answer so far. It's not something that's come up for us yet, till now. But the legal panel may have some opinion on that, so I would hold that question as well.
Anyone else with any questions?
So my request is, if it's possible for AMCHI platform to help the comunidades basically to have a data bank of their village maps, because there are very few comunidades. For example, Moira, I have heard, they have their maps and everything absolutely intact and in place. So similarly, if we could carry out an exercise to help all the other comunidades or whichever are interested, because there are many comunidades who almost don't have any kind of record of their maps or plantas.
Right.
So if we could initiate a process by which, we can help all them and make a data bank.
Yeah, we would love to do that. The bigger challenge for us is getting good data and you entrusting it outside of your comunidad office. But in your case, you provided us the survey numbers, you're coordinated as a comunidad to do that. We're there, right? If you're doing that work, we want to help you to present it, but also we could take on this work of archiving it, right? Putting it in a public place, because it's going to happen. At some point it's going to happen, but we can do it now if we're well coordinated. Right. That is an aspect, totally. At a family level, at a comunidad level, this becomes a constraint. But if you know, right. Now, agreed. And if you file a DSLR, you're paying something like 50 rupees per page times I don't know how many pages your planta is. So yes, there is a bill to foot once. But once you've digitized it, compiled it, hopefully no one has to go back for it, right? And that becomes a conversation in the comunidad or among the diaspora to say, here are some things we could really use now, and here's what that allows us to do. I mean, you have the record to join a conversation or administer your own comunidad.
I'm from Ambora, Camboli.
Yes.
They Gaunkar Komda Jaha Baba. Komda Chogli Bond Kelo Ha. Every time taking votes and everything, but they are not allowing.
Sorry, can you hold the mic closer to your mouth?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
They are not allowing the Komdat, and every time taking the votes and everything. Kamboli, Ambora. This is not opening only, I am shouting them.
Yeah.
Always shouting, why this not, everything is there.
Yeah.
Old rook hai, sogle ha. Moldate, kabar karun sakte.
Yes.
This is not nice, sir.
Yes.
And other thing is, Sangatuka, Shetani, Batani, they advertise board malde, antenna gaile, they kon paisa they koron dai maka. Kon komdad hata, kon chatkar hata, ante hata eso segat, am Gaunkar kiti hatle, komdad kiti hatle.
Yeah, so look, I agree. Like there are better ways to collect the data. It's more efficient ways.
Okay.
But a basic way might be to go into Bunaksha, and I can show you how to do this, and actually note down the survey numbers that still have this comunidad as occupant.
Yes.
That you can present back and say, okay, look, but it's still on the record as being comunidad. Of course, tenancy rights are another thing. That's another conversation.
Try to help us.
That's something that I think you'll want a legal opinion on. But you want to collect the data so that you can have an informed legal opinion.
Okay, sir.
And that's what I'm offering here. You've asked the comunidad, maybe lost, maybe in different parts, may not work. DSLR, please try persistently, because some people have been successful. The last is kind of a rote way to do it, which means a little bit more tedious, but possible to reconstruct the survey numbers that are still there. Now you may want to go back and say what happened to these other ones. Get what you can now and establish what you don't have in hand yet.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It help us.
Any more questions?
Hi.
Can you help us in overlapping these maps of Kumdad on the survey plan?
Of course. You have it?
Yeah, I got my maps.
Let's see it.
Plantas.
Yeah.
I've done manually, I've done.
Perfect.
But how, what will be your charges and all for all
So, no, there's no charge. We'll show you. Like, we've done this georeferencing. Ideally, we teach you how to do it, and you can share the knowledge. But if it's one map, I can also help you to do it.
I'll have to scan it, no? I'll have to scan the
Yes,
maps.
we need the highest resolution picture you can offer. Because a lot of it is like handwriting and then scanned from cloth, right? So, but the fact that you have it is a big win. It's something.
Can be done.
Absolutely. That's how we did the regional plans. All the regional plans are image files that we've reconstructed and georeferenced. So same, now you have an image file that will georeference in the same AMCHA as another map layer. And hopefully all the plantas come forward so that you can see actually the history of this place.
No, why I'm saying no, this planta map of ours, Komdad, are
Yeah.
not matching with the survey plans.
Yeah.
It is not matching.
Yes.
Even the boundaries of our village is not matching.
Yes.
So that's we want to correct it.
Yes. So once you have that overlap, then you can note the specific things that you want to go after, right? Where the boundary actually should be, what happened in this point. There's a bit of an archaeological exercise there, but at least you're working from facts, which a lot of folks are unfortunately not. Not yet.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Thank you.
I
One
think
more?
that, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Really good job with what you've done. But yeah, it's been a great thing what you've done. But I think you have to summarize a certain things. Like this cannot be misused. So some people might be afraid, oh, this
Yes.
information can be misused. It's just information for us to get more from, right?
Yes.
How we can help you get information and add it. I think that's something you have to add to this. So
Yes.
if you could summarize these things as well.
Agreed. And I've really struggled with that because our tendency is this information already exists somewhere, make it part of the Commonwealth. But one of the resistance points is they're already eating us. You've just given them more places to bite, right? You've shown your hand. And that's something that we haven't yet fully understood. We've had suggestions around making private versions of this map. We're just not in that position. We're a volunteer group. And we don't have the resources nor the in-house legal to defend against these things. If you have a strong opinion about how to approach this such that every comunidad can sign up to it and trust that this information is for the greater long-term good, then I'd love to approach that with you. Because that becomes a resistance point. A lot of people are saying, yeah, but if I let that go, you know, we don't know the second order outcome of putting that information to the public domain. We need to answer that question better. We just haven't had a good one yet. And I would love for one comunidad to go all the way on this and create that precedent, and then they can also, you know, help us tell the story of why that was important, why that leap was important. I think inevitably this stuff is, it's going to be made transparent at some point, you know, hopefully sooner than later, and it'll be up to us about how we approach that. Ideally, we're the ones doing it versus some other agency under some other motivation.
Hello.
Hi.
See, it is a very shocking news and very sad news for the Gaunkaries of the respective comunidades in Goa.
Yes.
So, now we are lots of like-minded Gaunkaries of the respective comunidades are really fighting from tooth to nail and nail to tooth for getting the destroyed the respective comunidades' properties, plots, lands and shares. But I know at the same time the question will come to me, the committees are there. But when the committees are taking the oaths in the name of God, I would like to know why the respective comunidad properties, plots, land, shares are not to be controlled. When the respective Gaunkas of the respective comunidades are shouting for all these allegations.
Yeah. That seems to be a regular topic about how to create alignment between the comunidad shareholders, Gaunkaries, and the management committees. That's something that I think maybe some of you can answer that represent the management committees, because I think that there seems to be a misalignment there that I may not be able to solve for you here from the mic.
Hi. I think we're going to end the questionnaire session right now because we're not sticking to what Marlon has actually introduced to us. We're getting into a very legal aspect which might later lead into a debate, which is not the reason for why we have come here today. Anyways, Marlon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, let me bring a particular aspect to all of you. I have also done my engineering in information technology. Technology, as much as it can simplify our life, we must remember is not perfect. But we can help it evolve into a perfect system only if we actively participate in making it work better in our favor. And that's exactly what Marlon was saying. Wherever you'll find an issue in armchair.in, do come forward with your grievances, corrections, if any. He has made use of tools that are easily available. Sadly, they're government-based tools, But wherever corrections are needed, it's needed, please come forward. The next thing is, how do we correct these systems? It all starts with unity. Today, it's really nice to see a lot of us Gaunkaries here. But how many of us after this meeting are going to go home and talk about what we have seen today? And that's something we lack. Like you see the government today, I don't want to spoil their name or anything, but they eat, sleep and drink real estate, how to make money and things like that. And that's how we need to imbibe certain values in us and the next generation, where we eat, sleep and drink the land of Goa, how do we save Goa, and how to be a bigger part of the comunidad system. There are a lot of Gaunkaries who can unite other Gaunkaries. We've had Luis and team who've done the linkage campaign that you all must have been aware of. That was really successful. Although they did not get all the Kumdads and the committees together, but they got most of them, and that's a start. Furthermore, we have a legal panel that we've put together, and we look forward to make that panel active for all the Kumdads across Goa, as long as that particular Kumdad wants help. So you all have to come forward and approach us for assistance. We will not come to your doorstep because it's just too much of things that are happening around. So you all have to be very proactive in this movement. So having said that, please give Marlon a big round of applause. He really deserves that for coming up with a system. He's used all the knowledge he has learned and gained abroad, come back to his hometown and built a system that can actually be used for something useful. And we encourage you to be in touch with Marlon to help better the system for all of us as a whole. So we will now have a short break for about, Jocel, 10 minutes will do? 15 minutes, okay? Snacks will be served. Kindly be seated. If you'll want to interact, please do so in your seats because we would like to take this further to the next session. Thank you. Okay. So welcome back, everyone. I hope the break was really refreshing enough. Our next session is a legal deep dive into the code of the comunidad. We are privileged to have seasoned Goan lawyers with us who will guide us through the preamble and Title 1, Chapter 1 of the Code of Comunidades, unpacking its relevance and application in today's context. So for this next part, we have a moderator, and I'd like to introduce her. She is the founding attorney of A&R Law Solutions, a boutique law firm specializing in corporate, commercial, and intellectual property laws, which offers a wide range of legal solutions to businesses and organizations. She has a master's degree in constitutional and administrative law and was the recipient of 4 gold medals at the Goa University for securing the first rank in LLM at the Goa University, including the prestigious Nani Palkiwala Gold Medal for being the state topper in LLM. A passionate public speaker, she has conducted numerous legal awareness and training sessions, most recently for the legal team at Mahindras and Mahindra. She has long been associated with women and child rights groups, and in her capacity as a certified POSH trainer, she regularly conducts POSH trainings and serves as the external member on internal committees of various organizations, including, among others, like Goa Miles and the Little Flea. As a daughter of a Gaunkar of the Comunidad of Saligaon, she has a deep-rooted interest in the Comunidad system of Goa. She also presented a paper titled A Detailed Study on the Functioning of 3 Comunidades in Bardez during her academic years, which was then published as an article. In addition to a legal practice, she is a published author of numerous research papers, articles, and blogs on various legal topics. Please help me in welcoming Advocate Rosella de Cruz. Please give her a big round of applause.
Thank you, Ninio, for the very warm welcome and introduction. Good day, everyone. It is my privilege to be here among such a distinguished panel that we are going to have up here, and among you, a very amazing audience. I hope that's what you all are going to be. I'm absolutely delighted to be the moderator for today's session on the Code of Comunidades, as the Comunidad system of Goa remains central to Goa's legal and cultural heritage. Now, as we all know, and if we don't, then we should know, that Comunidades of Goa, it's a legacy of Goa, and it is truly ancient. So long before Google could answer our questions, we had comunidades who were raising questions. And so today, we do not have Google here to answer us, rather we have a very distinguished panel of lawyers or experts in the field who will be here to answer our questions and tell us whether comunidades are still relevant, if they still matter. And they are also here to help us decode the Code of Comunidades. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the distinguished panelists for today, starting with the first panelist. Yeah. And the first panelist, and I'm very honored, I would say, to introduce him since I interned under him during my college days, is Advocate Nigel the Costa Frias. He is a distinguished advocate with 26 years of active legal practice. He has appeared before the Honorable Supreme Court of India, the Honorable Bombay High Court, various district courts, National Green Tribunal, and other legal forums. His expertise spans a wide range of areas, including civil law, property law, service law, environmental law, comunidades, panchayats, and the list can go on. Advocate Nigel is renowned for his depth of knowledge, expertise, and commitment to the law. We are extremely honored to have him share his knowledge and expertise with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you all to please welcome Advocate Nigel the Costa Frias with a round of applause. Thank you, sir. You can have your seat. Yes. Thank you. Our next panelist is a seasoned civil law practitioner who has been in active practice since 2014. His core expertise lies in property law, an area that is central to Goa's unique legal and cultural identity. Also being well-versed in the Portuguese Civil Code and its related legislation makes him a very valuable resource in interpreting Goa's distinct legal framework. Within his depth of knowledge and years of dedicated practice, he brings both clarity and practical insight to this discussion on the Code of Comunidades. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you all to please help me in welcoming Advocate Gideon Noronha, our second panelist for today's discussion. Moving on to our third panelist for today. Our next panelist is a practicing advocate who represents clients across all courts in Goa, including the Honorable High Court. With close to 8 years of experience at the bar, he handles a wide range of legal matters. Over the years, he has built a reputation for his versatility and commitment to justice, making him a trusted counsel for individuals and institutions alike. We are privileged to have him with us today on our panel to share his insights on the Code of Comunidades. Please help me in welcoming Advocate Shane Gomes Pereira with a round round of applause. So before we dive into our discussion, I would like to briefly outline on how we will proceed with the session. We'll first begin with a few initial opening thoughts from our panel, and then it will be followed by an interactive discussion based on certain questions that we have to ask them on the Code of Comunidades. And after that, towards the end, we will open the floor for questions from the audience. So requesting the audience to make a note of any questions that you all would want to ask our panelists, and we will try to address as many questions as time permits. Also, before we begin, we would like to give a very clear and short disclaimer that this session is being conducted solely for educational and awareness purposes only. The discussion that we are having here today, it's not intended to challenge or, offend any authority, any person, or any comunidad. It is purely meant to help us understand and reflect on the continuity and of comunidades and the importance of comunidades in Goa. Great. So we are going to now begin with our discussion. There is one. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So thank you all for coming. And to start with, we've often heard, the discussions that happen nowadays. Are comunidades even relevant? Are they important? We see a lot of changes happening or changes being made to the Code of Comunidades, a lot of things like that. So to start the discussion, I would like to understand your perspective, each one of your perspectives, on whether or not you all feel that comunidades are relevant, and is the Code of Comunidad also relevant in today's contemporary Goa? And maybe we can start with the order in which we came. So, Sir Nigel, maybe, yeah, you can use the mic.
So it's a very important question nowadays, because we always have this debate about the ownership and holding of land. So there's this, I would use the word confusion, because some people have this view that Comunidad lands belong to the public. Some people say it's the property of the Comunidad. It's like the Comunidad is like a private owner basically, so they have the right to do what they want with their land. That as compared to, or as distinguished with, lands which belong to individual land owners. Now, in my view, this is now my perspective, I feel that the concept of Comunidades is much more relevant today than perhaps it has ever been. Because we see this large-scale amas alienation of land in Goa. I won't use the word insiders, outsiders, but for development, for other commercial purposes. So people are just, and a lot of Goans who are now overseas and who don't live in Goa, they tend to sell the lands because they don't want the hassle of maintaining them. The families can't agree on the partitions, etc. So what is happening is this alienation of land for commercial development. So therefore, all the more it is necessary that we have a concept called of comunidades, because then it's a concept of joint ownership and community ownership of land. So as long as we preserve that this concept and this institution, I think if not within the next decade or two, we're going to have a complete depletion of these agricultural lands in Goa, and that therefore, I think all the more now we need to strive to protect these lands which are under common ownership. Otherwise, Goa is really headed for trouble.
Thank you, sir, for that perspective.
With respect to the confusion that is caused between the actual Code of Comunidad and you have the Panchayati Raj Act, you have the Land Revenue Code being implemented here in Goa itself. My view on all of this is that, in fact, Mahatma Gandhi's Panchayat Raj system, which he actually envisioned, was already running and already enacted and properly set up here in terms of the Code of Comunidad. Now, that will be a very fun and interesting and a surprising thing to you, but being a private owner of the land itself, having amphitheated lands and in its Tombasar too having private lands itself, that 5 members, like the 5 Gaunkaries system that was already here, has only been superseded, not even superseded, they have enacted laws over that system. So currently, in the current legal scenario, legal perspective that you have, the Code of Comunidad is all the more relevant now because of such vast alienations which are happening and the unplanned development that we see happening in terms of construction which really doesn't bring anything productive to the actual Goan economy.
Thank you, sir, for your input.
So, with regard to the relevance of the code, as both my learned colleagues have said, there is a large-scale alienation happening today, and the alienation is taking place with the lands which belong to the Comunidad. And if the Comunidad land is preserved, you can protect the state in both terms of its economy as well as its environment. And therefore, the Comunidades are the most relevant today because the large-scale developments which are taking place are destroying us in terms of the economy of the village as well as in terms of our environment. And therefore, there is a very relevant aspect to the survival of the Comunidades today.
Thank you, sir, for your input. So moving ahead, as we've understood, whether Comunidades are relevant or not relevant, that discussion has been laid to rest hopefully here today. And moving ahead with some questions that were prepared particularly on the preamble and Title 1, Chapter 1 of the Code of Comunidades. The first question that we have is that the preamble to the Code of Comunidades states that the dissolution of the property of the Comunidad has been prohibited. Could you all please explain to us and the audience at large as to what exactly this means? What is the interpretation of this?
Perhaps my understanding of the question is one can't sell Comunidad lands.
Yeah, the dissolution of the property of the Comunidad has been prohibited. So this is what's mentioned in the preamble. So, what is the interpretation of this for a common man to understand?
Interpretation would be, even if you're a grantee, as I understand it, if you've been granted a Comunidad land, you can't transfer it to any other person or you can't sell it. There's a prohibition on sale. Even if, for example, you get a long lease of a Comunidad land or your grant. There's a prohibition in you transferring that land to any third party. Even if you redeem that, there's a concept of paying 20 times the annual fee and then redeeming the grant. But you can't, there's a prohibition on you alienating or transferring the land to any other third party. And that's important because you would get the land either as a Gaunkar or as a, for example, under 334A, you could even get it as a landless jonero or something. I mean, so therefore that concept of you then transferring it to a third party for commercial purposes or for as a sale, that would go against the concept of the Code of Comunidades, because that means concept is joint and common ownership, community ownership of the land. So, therefore, I think that's what it means. Basically.
My view is a little bit different from what Dotor has. Now, he has given an individually relevant view in terms of the actual properties. Now, institutionally speaking, if you were to dissolve the actual assets of the Comunidad, there is only one Comunidad in the whole of Goa. I think it's the Comunidad of Veli, where they have completely destroyed the actual, not destroyed, I mean, they have gotten rid of all amphitheatered lands there, and everyone has gone ahead and purchased the actual properties. So my view on the actual dissolution of the corpus of the Comunidad would be this, wherein you cannot actually go ahead and completely liquidate all the assets of the Comunidad. There will always be in a village amphitheatered lands, there will always be private lands, and one cannot go ahead and completely give it over to private ownership.
Just to add to that also, yes, what Gideon also said is relevant because once a Comunidad is constituted, that's from the ancient times, and it holds land. Even if that Comunidad ceases to function, the land will always remain that of that Comunidad. You can't, does not get dissipated or gets, you can't, no private person can take it over. Even the state can't take it over unless it follows the procedure laid down in the code.
So, with regard to the dissolution of, as asked, we have to look at Article 5, if I'm not mistaken, which speaks that a comunidad may not even have a discussion on the question of dissolution, which, as both my learned colleagues rightly said, is that it prohibits the alienation of land. Now, if the comunidad itself cannot alienate the land, that is, sell the land, there is no question of a person who has been granted the land selling the land, because their grant is limited to possession and the enjoyment. Title is never transferred to the person. And as Advocate Nigel rightly said, even when you pay the 20 quid rent, you are paying it only for the purpose of a perpetual possession. Title is never transferred with that. The title always rests with the comunidad, and the comunidad cannot even deliberate and pass a resolution to sell the land.
Thank you for, your perspectives on this. Yeah. That did give us clarity on that. Moving on to the next question. One major impact that this Code of Comunidad 1961, as it mentions in the preamble again, it says that foro, which is ground rent, which the comunidades were paying to the national X.C.H.R, has been abolished. And it has also been mentioned that by doing so, the historical truth was restored. The reason being that the property of the comunidad belongs to them. So if the property of the comunidad belongs to them, then we would like to know what is the relevance and applicability of the revenue laws that we have on comunidad land. Would they be binding on comunidad land?
So, what the 1961 code, the legislative diploma does is that, see, earlier in the system under the Portuguese regime was the comunidades used to pay this ground rent to the government, which is the rent is to pay for holding the land. Now, the present code, the legislative diploma of 1961, has abolished that concept. And by doing so, what the preamble of the present code says is that recognizes the complete ownership and title of the comunidad lands on the respective comunidades. So therefore, it means that the comunidades are like a body or an institution which holds its own lands as the proprietor. In my view, now this is my view, nevertheless, the provisions of the Goa Land Revenue Code would still apply. It is a legislation that has been brought about by the government of Goa under its legislative powers under Articles 245 and 246 of the Constitution. What it does is Section 20 of the Land Revenue Code specifies the classes of holdings. Now, Class 1 is a holder who is entitled to hold the land in perpetuity without any restrictions. So it's like, for example, you're the owner, you get it, either you buy it or you inherit it. And Class 2 are those who are entitled to hold the land maybe in perpetuity but with certain restrictions. For example, government grantees who are granted land under these alvaras and all. So comunidades in this case would be Class 1 occupants of land in terms of Section 20. The preamble and the statement of objects and reasons of the Goa Land Revenue Code clearly states that the code has been enacted to bring about laws regulating the administration of land and payment of land revenue. So administration of land would cover land not only of the government or granted by the government, but land also held under private ownership. So in my view, the Goa Land Revenue Code would still apply, of course subject to the laws, that's the Code of Comunidad and other laws governing the rights to hold property.
Thank you, sir, for that.
So when you look at the Indian system of land revenue, it's a federal system. Land Revenue Code is set up for that purpose. As Dr. rightly said, comunidades are Class 1 occupants, but the actual leaseholders and emphyteusis holders in reality are Class 2 occupants, that is leaseholders. They hold a land in perpetuity but with certain restrictions on transfer. Now, the abolition of the actual payment of fore to the X.C.H.R simply means that you are now moving from a federal system to a local system, a decentralized system of collection of land revenue, which is what the Code of Comunidad actually enacts. So that goes totally against what like general Indian law does, and it puts Goa on the map as a very special place in terms of the collection of land revenue here itself. That being said, there are certain laws which have been enacted which interfere with the functionings of the comunidad itself, like the land abolition of titles and abolition of zamindari, which try to do away with collection of land revenue at local sources. And the Panchayati Raj system itself, which comes up over that and then collects your house tax and everything like that, which supersedes, comes over the code of comunidad there itself. So the collection of land revenue, yes, in the code of comunidad is relevant, but you have interference from these different sources.
Conflict between the two laws. Hello. I would not say that there is a conflict between the two laws, because as Advocate Nigel has rightly pointed out, that the Land Revenue Code is a legislation which classifies lands and landholders. It determines how the land can be used, to what use it can be put, and if you want to change the use, what is the procedure. The Code of Comunidades is one which is restricted to how the comunidades are to function. And to answer the question as to the payments which had to be made to the National X.C.H.R. Now, under the Code of Comunidades, there is an exemption which has been granted to the comunidades from paying that. They have said they shall no longer be liable to pay it. And under the Land Revenue Code, as well, there is a provision which specifies that if there is an exemption which has been granted under any law, such lands shall be exempted from land revenue. So that comunidades are not liable to pay that revenue to the state, X.C.H.R. The provision under Land Revenue Code is section 49, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry. I just want to add to that. Now, a lot of people in Goa have this perception. I don't know, I wouldn't want to say a wrong perception or right perception. They have this perception that the Land Revenue Code should not apply to comunidad lands because these lands are not granted by the government, etc., etc. Now, if one understands the Land Revenue Code, it's not only about classifying the holders of land, it also deals with how, as Shane mentioned, how the lands are to be used and utilized. For example, if you need to convert your land from agricultural to non-agricultural purpose, you need a sanad. And that sanad is given to you under Article 32 of the Code of the Land Revenue Code. Then you deal with also how surveys are done, how boundaries are marked. All that is done under the Land Revenue Code. So Land Revenue Code is not only about how a land is held, about classification of holdings, it's also about the administration and regulation of how lands are to be held and also regulated. I mean, the regulation of the holdings. That's what it is.
Yes, thank you, sir, for enlightening us on that. Moving on to Title 1, Chapter 1. Article 3 speaks about the composition of the comunidades. So it basically tells us that each comunidad is composed of joneros or Gaunkaries, as we call them, shareholders. Then we can have joneros and shareholders, and then participants. So could you all, since these are definitions, maybe one or two of you all could split the two and enlighten us on what exactly this would cover?
The concept of actual Gaunkaries or Zonkars, as you call them, was a right that was applicable by birth. One's grandfather, one's great-grandfather, one's father to oneself. This was class 1 of the components of the comunidad, the Gaunkaries who were entitled to zone, that is the profits from the actual land which were there.
Shareholders? What do you want to go
So, for this, we must first understand what is the comunidad. Now, the comunidad is originally a body of the original settlers of the area. And it is them pooling the resources of the area to have the common good of the community rather than look at it in an individualistic manner. So, at a time when a comunidad required to generate more revenue to undertake works, such as building barns, they would sell shares, and that is how they would generate a revenue. And the people who bought those shares would be called the shareholders, and the payment made to them would be called dividends rather than zone. But effectively, they are also getting a share of the profits of the comunidad, and that are your shareholders.
Yes, so as he explained, so there are three classes. There are the Gaunkaries or the Zonkars who are the primary members. Some of them are members by virtue of their birth or their lineage. Now, there are shareholders who have purchased shares who stand on a slightly different footing. And the only distinguishing factor is Gaunkaries or the Zonkaries do not have share certificates. They are registered as members. The shareholders have certificates which can be transferred. If you, either you can sell them or they can be transferred by way of a testament, that you make a will and you indicate in the will who the shares are to be transferred to. So there is a subtle difference. And then we have this, the third group, which is participants. Now, I also was not clear about this. So I had discussions with some very learned people well versed in the Komdat system. And what I understand is participants are those who were invited to be to join in as components of the Komdat by virtue of their experiences in a certain field or the contribution they make towards the services they render to the Komdat. For example, certain lawyers from the legal field were called to be participants in the Komdat. So there are these three categories essentially, that's what it is.
To add to that, one could only ever be a Zonkar or Gaonkar of one Komunidad, but one could be a shareholder of multiple Komunidad. So that was one restriction as far as these classes are concerned.
Thanks for enlightening us. I mean, that's a lot of knowledge, a lot of new things to definitely learn. A follow-up question to that. Now that we know the components of, a Komunidad, many times we see that descendants struggle to understand if they qualify under any of these categories. So, is there any way by which they can verify, or is there any legal document or any process in place, anything particularly maybe for the younger generations to make it a bit simpler to identify if they belong to a particular Komunidad and in which category they belong?
So if your ancestor was a shareholder, then they should have a share certificate. And if the person whose name is mentioned in the share certificate is deceased, and you claim through inheritance from that person, you have to, like how you normally would do to claim an inheritance, you have to, if that person has not left a will, you have to have a succession deed, or in inventory proceedings, those shares have to be allotted to you. Now, if you're a Gaunkar or a Zonkar, then your name will be in the register of members, so you can visit the Komdat and verify the record. That's all.
Anything that you all would want to add to it? Okay. Moving on to Article 4. Article 4 of Title 1, Chapter 1, it states that only the Zonkars and shareholders are entitled to the profits and losses of the Komunidad, and only they have the rights guaranteed and the duties imposed on members under this code. So can you enlighten us on what are some of these rights and liabilities that the code is actually speaking about? I mean, profits, we all know about zone and the benefits, the dividend that you get, but what are these rights and liabilities, and under which section in the code do we find them?
Rights, and I would start with rights. So members have the rights. For example, the basic right they have is to be on the managing committee of the Komdat. So that is, the right is only of the components. You can be a president, you can be an attorney, you can contest the elections. Yeah. Only the members can participate in the deliberations of the Komdats. You are entitled to the profits and losses. There are not many liabilities, but under Article 26 of the Code of Komdats, their rights and duties are specified. Okay. And the basic rights are, you have the right to decide upon the, for example, if there's a proposed lease of Komdat land, the file has to go first to the general body. And once the general body of the Komdat approves that proposal, then it goes forward to the administrator, etc. So these are some of the rights which the members enjoy, which others don't.
Now coming to the actual liabilities, one of the most powerful liabilities as far as Komunidad lands are concerned is the right to pay the rendition in terms of Article 238, 239 and 240 of the Code of Komunidad. Now that would be the sole repository of liability in terms of the actual Gaunkars themselves. Also the right to redeem one's payment of annuities if they were not paid for a certain amount of time. That is also one thing that would be solely in the hands of either the Gaunkars or the shareholders.
Yeah, this article further, it mentions that for the purpose of, Zonkars, to consider Zonkars, the orphan sons of the members by birth and their widows and unmarried daughters who are entitled to receive the proceeds of zone or annuity, they are also considered Zonkars. I mean, in today's world, when we speak about equality and gender equality and all of that, Do we see this happening of widows and unmarried daughters? I mean, do you all have any practical knowledge of whether this is followed?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Sorry, no. In addition to that question, in this section, what's mentioned is that deceased Gaunkar's orphan sons or his widow or unmarried daughters, if they who are entitled to receive the proceeds of zone or annuity for service or lifelong pension, then they shall also be considered as members by birth, that is Gaunkars. So do we see this happening?
Yes, it happens in many Komdads. I mean, if the law prescribes, it has to happen.
Yeah, so the procedure is that if the law prescribes it has to happen,
They themselves registered, there's a process.
Yeah.
You have to apply to the administrator for...
and this will be like irrespective
I
of
think,
the...
if I'm not mistaken, there's a gazette publication that has to be done. There's a procedure to be followed.
On this.
But it can happen, and it does happen also.
Okay. Anything that you're...
So, although this is the prescribed procedure, many of you comunidades are deeply divided on the actual role of women, which, as per the law, is actually given right there. Many comunidades are deeply speculative as to how women can come, vote and all, but in terms of the actual code itself, it allows for the participation of women. That's my take on it.
I only have to add to what Advocate Nigel said is that, as he rightly pointed out, is that if you have the right, you can always apply for it and follow the procedure and then claim it. But whether it happens, it all depends on whether people have sought to enforce their right or not. If people have not sought to enforce their right, then it may have never happened in recent times.
So yeah, that's like a progressive step for us because we are generally told that comunidades means males and not females, so definitely needed. Coming to Article 12 of the Code of Comunidades, there it mentions that any attachment or seizure for debts of the comunidad may fall on its credits, on the net income from income or expense books, and any other profits, but never on any immovable property. While this seems clear, you can kindly explain to us, the reasons for this, and if we could use this as an inference to better understand any other articles in the code.
To my understanding, the reason for this, to say that the liability for debts would fall on the lands of the Komdad is to ensure that in my view, the reason for having this provision that the liability for the debts of the Komdads won't be on the lands of the Komdad is to ensure that the lands are never alienated. For example, you can't mortgage lands of the Komdad. I mean, so because the concept then gets defeated, common ownership. So the only other way would be to attach the produce, or the members would have to the shares, etc. But the lands can never be encumbered. That's the idea.
Now, this particular article, Article 12, is an exception to the general rule of liquidation and debt recovery. In any other situation of debt recovery, be it companies, be it individual debts, or be it anything, the first charge or hold comes over a person's land. Even in execution proceedings when we have, it is lands of the person or immovable assets that are actually taken, they are attached by the court, and then they are sold in terms of public auction or otherwise. So this particular article in the Code of Comunidad is a special exception to this general law of debt recovery, wherein the actual land itself cannot be encumbered, and as we've already discussed earlier, that the actual liquidation of the comunidad is itself not possible. So if you are to ensure that the liquidation of the comunidad is not possible itself, then you have to have this special exception.
As said, Article 12 prohibits the attachment of land, and what we need to understand here is that even under the Agricultural Tenancy Act, there is a prohibition to attach the tenant's land. And that is because if the person has incurred a debt and the source of income is the agriculture, you are completely destroying the person's possibility of ever having a future. And here, if you attach the lands, you are destroying the future of an entire community, because a comunidad's main source of income is its agriculture. The main land holdings are agricultural lands. So, in effect, it protects the community at large, because if you see, the debts would have originally been incurred by a managing committee without consultation of the general body. It is not necessary that the general body was consulted prior to incurring the debt. And you cannot infringe upon the rights of an entire community when only a few of the community have taken a decision. And by not attaching the lands, you are able to allow them a chance of repayment of the debt without losing their only asset.
Makes sense. Oh, yes, thank you for that. We've come to the end of our questions that were prepared for y'all, but since we have a little bit of time, I would like to understand your perspective, and again, what is your take? Do you all feel that the current code of comunidad that we have is good as it is? Or do you all feel there are any changes or reforms that are needed? If yes, then what?
I feel the code is good as it is, but the language used sometimes can be a little archaic. You know, it has to be brought a little in tune with modern times so people easily understand. You see, for example, Article 12, etc. There are a lot of concepts which, as the way it is worded, are difficult for a common man to understand. So that's the first thing that needs to be done. I'm not saying redraw the code, but the provisions need to be brought a little, upstep in keeping with the changing times. I also feel probably there could be, instead of introducing provisions which one can easily do away with comunidad lands, you need to have a little more stringent provisions which protect these lands, where the managing committees cannot divest the comunidades very easily of their lands. Sometimes they just issue NOCs and they try to. So little more stringent provisions as far as protection of the lands of the comunidades I feel is necessary.
Thank you, sir.
I feel there is a provision within the code itself, if it's reversed, actually helps in actual protection of the land itself. Okay. If one were to look at Article 5, is it? Article 7 it is. Article 7 of this Code of Comunidad says that the comunidades do not enjoy in regards to the immovable properties granted on emphyteuses the right conferred to the grantors under Article 1662 of the Civil Code in its paragraphs, and the said immovable properties may be alienated, divided. However, the comunidad shall have the right to increase the pension foro at the time of its division and in terms prescribed under this code. Now, what Article 1662 of the actual Portuguese Civil Code says, Article 1662 Clause 7, that was a very devastating weapon in the hands of the comunidades formally before the 1933 iteration of the Code of Comunidades itself, where if one were to partition these actual emphyteuted lands and divide them without the actual permission of the comunidad, the fore that would be paid for each of the pieces of these lands would be equal to the entire land which was actually given on emphyteuses. Now, in today's context, that becomes even more relevant, because if you have construction being carried out on land, and the construction companies and all can afford huge amounts in terms of actual rent remission or any fees to be paid. If one were to reverse this and make it that the Article 1662 actually applied, and this Article 1662 has also been carried over to the actual Goa Succession Special Notaries Act in terms of Article 294 Clause 7. Now, if one were to make this applicable, anybody dividing comunidad land without its permission and without its consent would then have to pay for each piece he made equal to the larger land which was there. Now, let's say there is a construction company which has, say, 1 lakh square meters. And there's a massive project coming on it with different bungalows, say 400 square meter bungalows, plots which were there. Now, that would be a very devastating thing if the comunidad could actually implement that, because each of the small pieces of land would then afterwards be liable to pay for equal to the 1 lakh square meter properties. Now, the remission on an average for 300 or 400 square meter land itself is somewhere in the range of, say, 20 to 30 lakhs. Imagine what a 1 lakh square meter property would actually have. So that is a devastating provision if you had that reversed.
So if I was to consider making a change to the code, it would only be with regard to a time frame within which the administrator has to respond to requests made by the comunidad, and making it easier for comunidades to reclaim their lands. Because currently the procedure is quite tedious and the administrators many a times do not cooperate with the comunidades. So as our state had enacted a Time-Bound Services Act, within the code we need to make a provision where the administrator has to respond within a time-bound manner.
Time-bound manner, that's the yes, I agree.
Thanks for that. Since we finished with the planned and scheduled questions, we now are open for questions from the audience. Just a few things to keep in mind. In case anyone has a question, please raise your hand. The mic will be brought to you. And also, in the interest of time, we would request you all to please keep the questions brief and to the point so that we can answer as many as we can. Anyone who has a question? Yep.
Regarding the tenancy, when is the declaration of the tenants and then afterward they go for the purchasing. After the purchasing, the Mamladar issue, you cannot transfer and give deed and all that. But there is no clause that particular land have not taken from the comunidad. After many years, even the deputy collector saying your name is not there in particular, did not belong to you. And to keep the record, we have to keep the record for many years, order of that tenancy. That file tomorrow is a missing line. So what is the provision? We can add one name, that is the land is taken from that from the comunidad. In that transfer, there is a line transfer and you cannot and give deed, or neither you can make a sale deed. So we can add that name of the comunidad in that column. Can do something about that.
If it's under the Agricultural Tenancy Act, then the purchase certificate will itself mention who was the landlord.
Yes.
So that record is always there. And if
1
it is,
and 14, I'm talking about.
and if
1
it's
and
in the form 1 and 14, then once the purchase certificate is issued, the landlord's name will be bracketed. So the bracketed entry will be should be there in the.
Now they are deleting. Now they are deleting.
Okay.
They are not keeping any entry in that now at the present state.
Perhaps,
by
yeah.
the Mamladar. We can add something at least in the name of the comunidad in that column.
No, under the present format, it is not possible, as I understand it. But perhaps some register could be maintained under the Tenancy Act.
Otherwise, what happens?
Yes.
Every member, new committees coming, and they are not keeping any record of
Yes,
that.
you would need an amendment in the land revenue rules,
Yes.
the survey rules to happen.
Thank you.
Then
Hello.
next, yeah.
Hello. Okay.
My question is to everybody, the managing committees as well as the general body, and most of all to our legal panel, advocates and legal luminaries. We are on the cusp of a very, very difficult situation. The lands belonging to the comunidad have been put up for regularization, and we all need to take a stand on this. So I would request everyone here to give their say and how do we go about it all together. Because this is a point where the involvement of each and every component of the comunidad is necessary. Thank you.
Yeah, we understand, sir, but
I would like an answer from the panel.
See, in terms of what you've actually said, yes, we are on the cusp of actual existential crisis here. Now, an example not to follow and not to do is what Karamboli Comunidad has done there, because they have just for the sake of it, gone to challenge that law itself. If one were to challenge the actual act, would have to come up in the process itself and then challenge it as violative of part of the statutes of the Code of Comunidad, and not go immediately and go to challenge it just for the sake of publicity, I may add.
So I had given an opinion that as far as this new regularization bill is concerned with regard to the comundads, is that one cannot, now we have just, as we had gone through the Q&A session earlier, the comundads are the owners of their own land. So for example, if I own a land and the government wants to then regularize an illegal construction or an illegal encroachment on my land, they need my consent. So similarly, they would need the consent of the Komdad. Now there's a provision in that bill which says that it has to first go to the Komdad, and if the Komdad does not give its consent, then there's a right of appeal provided to authorized officer. That concept itself militates against the Code of Komdads and the constitutional right under Article 300A of the Constitution, which says that a person has the right to hold his property and cannot be divested of the property without following the due process of law. So according to me, the only other way the government can regularize these encroachments by bypassing the Komdad is by acquiring the land. But otherwise, they cannot force a Komdad, even by virtue of an appellate provision, force the Komdads to agree to the regularization. That's my view, and I would advise many Komdads who had come to me to challenge the enactment the moment it is assented to by the governor and notified.
See, the actual provisions that are being violated or being militated by that actual bill and the act which it has now become are Articles 371 to 399 of the Code of Comunidad, which prescribe a very specific process by which comunidades themselves go against encroachment and actually regularize encroachment, and it is up to the managing committee to follow those. So some bill coming over that and actually having implications of actually wiping out that is actually illegal. So you cannot make one law and have it come over another law this way. So to challenge it, actually one would have to follow the process. I'm not saying it is not wise to actually go and challenge it, but challenge it in the actual process, not challenge it plain that way.
Well, I'm of the opinion that we would require to challenge the amendment because, as it has been rightly pointed out, that the government is seeking to usurp the right of the Comunidad and decide to regularize a structure, an illegal structure on Comunidad land. And further, with this amendment, that regularization, they are trying to say amounts to a sale of the land, which either way is prohibited by the code. And how can the government decide to sell land which does not belong to it? It is completely contrary to the very tenets of law.
The next question.
I have a clear picture here. Government acquires the land for a specific purpose, and he puts on the notification for the specific purpose. I want to bring to the notice of all of you, Zuari Agri-Chemical land was allotted to them of 5 lakh square meter for a specific purpose, saying that they will provide employment to the people of Goa. They have occupied about 30,000, 40,000 square meter for a construction of the industry. And the balance land, today government comes in between and try to sell it, try to develop it for purpose of other than the industry and the employment. Is it proper, or is it possible, or is it not possible?
Here you are partly mistaken. That land was never acquired by the government.
No, it was given to...
It was never acquired by the government, so there you cannot bring in the question of acquisition law. That is a private transfer between a Comunidad and the Zuari Agri. So here what your question should be is whether it can be, when the Comunidad has granted it for a specific purpose, can it be permitted to be utilized for another purpose? And whether the Comunidad could have actually sold that land, or whether it is just possession which has been granted to Zuari. Those are the questions which have to be asked in that matter.
Okay, in that matter is different. But today government is trying to acquire land to give industrial developments and industrial industries to come up in Goa. And for any other purpose. Is it possible under the Code of Comunidad?
To acquire land, for sure the government has the right to acquire land. You can't look at the code, you have to look at the Land Acquisition Act for that.
No, it is already tenanted. Suppose it's tenanted.
The government has the right to acquire the land. There is a separate statute for that. You cannot say the code forms a bar for that.
Any land?
Yes.
Even agriculture.
See, with respect to Zuari specifically, the case law that is relevant to what you're saying is one Basilia Gomes versus Zuari Agrochemicals, which is decided in 2008. 2008, it's in the GRTs, it's reported there. Now, what happens there in that case is the rent remission which is there, which is paid by Zuari, For that 499 hectares, it's not just a small land, 499 hectares, 500 square meters that is. It's just 10,32,000.
A big land.
Yeah. Now, the mistake that that managing committee made at that point of time to challenge it,
That I am trying.
at that point of time, was that they went and they challenged the remission without actually showing the rent remission of any other comunidades or even that comunidad itself, wherein the remission which we were paying, like normal people were paying, was much higher per square meter than what Zwari paid. Second part of that actual remission that was actually paid was, it was not the managing committee of the comunidad that ultimately came to a decision on the remission that is prescribed by the code of comunidad. It is the governor and the administrator of comunidades who fix that remission. Now, these are executive authorities. Now, any money bill or any money matter which is to be decided has to be decided and has to be brought by like the people.
Okay, simple question. Whether government can acquire any land of comunidad and give it to any property developer or any industrial zone or anyone who is interested in getting land for them, their purpose.
See, government can acquire lands if it requires it for certain public purposes. That cannot be fettered because the government, sometimes it does it vindictively, sometimes it does it benevolently.
Private,
in terms of
private
lands. Now, in terms of actual like setting up of the IT park, that has been a hot topic of contention. Now, the government is looking at different areas wherein there is large enough land to actually take it. Now, there are certain lands which are held by private properties, which are private parties, which are actually fraud. And there, these lands are actually taken or they are stolen from the actual comunidad. Now, the government is turning a total blind eye to this. Correct. Now, if one were to actually challenge the acquisition of the land, one in that village would have to show which actual land was there to that size, or one wherein the title to that land was faultily taken, and then say re-allot it or take that land over in terms of, instead of actual comunidad land, if one were to actually challenge a land acquisition properly.
So government cannot acquire any private land or comunidad land for other purpose.
No, see, I'll just to elaborate on what my learned colleagues were saying. Now there is this concept of eminent domain. Eminent domain of the government where it has the right to acquire any private land to put it to some public purpose or a policy decision of the government. It has to be a public purpose, that's the concept. Now, Comunidad land stands on the same footing as a private land holding. So it can acquire private land belonging to individual landowner or of a comunidad, provided it is for a public purpose. That's the purpose mentioned in the Land Acquisition Act of 1894 and the new act, the right to transparency and fair compensation. So the only rider is that while divesting an owner of his land, the government has to pay just compensation. But otherwise, if it's for a public purpose, the government, by virtue of its powers of eminent domain, has the right to acquire the land. Now, you can challenge the acquisition if you feel that the acquisition is not really for a public purpose. It's couched as a public purpose, but it's actually a private purpose. For example, there may be a person who wants access 10-meter road to his private property, and he wants the road through the Comunidad land. So then, if he's powerful enough, he can get the government to acquire that. But then you can challenge that in the High Court by saying, though it is stated to be a public purpose, it is not, because no other citizen is benefiting, but this one individual person. So therefore, it's not really a public purpose. But the whole issue is, the crux is, it has to be for a public purpose.
The road is provided to a factory or whatever from the community.
I'm sorry?
The road is provided to the comunidad property.
Through comunidad. I'm just giving an example.
Anyone else with a question?
Yeah, I would just like to put a point up here and go directly to the crux of the matter, which is here, which is rightly pointed out, that the comunidades are facing an existential crisis. Now my point is, when this new legislation is being brought out, 39 by the Legislative Assembly, it is directly ultra-vires the Article 14 of the Constitution, which provides that all citizens should be seen and treated equally. Now my question is, I am an ordinary citizen. I buy a piece of land. I pay stamp duty. I pay the registration charges. I pass my plans by going to the town and country planning. then I go to the panchayat, then there is conversion. And let us assume there is another person who is an encroacher into the Comunidad land. He is a squatter there, okay? And then this legislation is trying to legalize, all this illegality this person has done. So what is my vis-a-vis this person? After I follow all the legalities, I am being treated in the same status as a person who has done illegalities. So why should we ever follow any laws? So it is not discriminatory of Article 14 of the Constitution. Secondly, this will open the floodgates, for everybody to come and be a squatter on Comunidad land, waiting for an opportunity that some amnesty will be given to you at a later date. And this will be the end of the Comunidades. My second question is, Comunidad land, the Agricultural Land Tenancy Act 1974 provides a concept which is known as deemed owner. So in this deemed owner concept, the tenant is given the Comunidad land at 40 paise. 40 paise is, peanuts by today's this. Secondly, they are only buying this land because it is being given to them at 40 paise. The government has, under that 18K provision, all the land which has been taken under this 18K, express provision is there that it will be used only for agriculture purpose, but they have been used for scrapyards, for buildings, then cement blocks, and etc. So many this. So my question is, can we challenge these two things? This is one as the first aspect is which is imminent. The second one is this one which is fragmenting totally the Comunidades. Again, existential crisis. So can we at least ask for enhancement of this 40 paise? Let us suppose Comunidad of Chinchini. Some days back when a road was widened there, NH 66, 5,300 was paid for agricultural land acquired by the government, and we are getting at 40 paisa. Going even to the Mamladar to collect that money, I think even our traveling expenses will not be covered. So these are the 2 points I am making, but our priority is to challenge this Legislative Assembly Bill 39 in courts. And in as much as there is another one, I think it is 40, which also mentions Comunidad. So please clarify, whatever course we should be taken.
As I understand it, there are two queries. One is one is about the regularization of unauthorized construction and regularization of unauthorized construction on Comunidad land. It stands on two different footings. Now, I agree that if I, as an owner of a land, I follow the entire procedure. I go to the town and country. First, I get a conversion sanad. I go to the TCP department. I get a development permission. I go to the panchayat. I build my house on my land by following all the procedure. I sometimes spend years on that. And a person who just suddenly occupies some land, maybe even his own land, and builds a huge bungalow, and then comes, when the government comes with this bill overnight, regularizes it. So why should there be a discrimination between these two persons? And here you're absolutely right. But that's a different challenge altogether. That the challenge in this case would be an arbitrary discrimination between two individuals, two classes of people, where one class of persons are required to follow the law and do everything as per the law and by the book, and another class of persons who are required to not follow any law and still get the benefit at the end of the day. So that's an Article 14 challenge, where you say there's a hostile, arbitrary discrimination between two classes of people. And that could be a ground of challenge. Apart from the fact that it also militates against the planning laws. Why do you have a Town and Country Planning Act? Why do you have a Panchayat Raj Act? If you're going to regularize unauthorized constructions at a drop of a hat. But the other issue is regularization of these constructions on Comunidad land. That's a little different, because here you're saying that without the consent of the Comunidades, without the Comunidades agreeing, you are trying to regularize an encroachment on Comunidad land, where you're then divesting, by virtue of this backdoor legislative bill, you are regularizing an encroachment on Comunidad land, divesting the Comunidades of their land, which is unconstitutional. So there are two different things. Both can be challenged.
See, in terms of the actual land settlement laws or the emancipation laws, which were actually formally there and are still in force, you had the Munkar Act and you had the Agricultural Tendency Act, both of which aimed to settle the people on the land ultimately. Then you had the government come up last time with the Bhumiputra Act, and then ultimately you come up with this regularization on Comunidad land, the construction. So there is no end to the land settlement, there's perpetual land settlement there. So that is arbitrary, sir, like you said, because any emancipation laws or land settlement laws have to have what was formerly called that sunset clause. Beyond this particular date, no more regularization, because you are deemed to either be settled on the land or you're not interested in your rights.
With regard to his, your question of increase in the compensation for the purchase under the Agricultural Tenancy Act, that legally as of date you can't do anything for enhancement. That is something within the domain of the legislature. So until and unless the legislature changes the date for the valuation of the property when the purchase is being done, you can't seek for enhancement there.
Hello.
One by one, please.
Yeah.
Here.
If a person is declared as a tenant and he has not followed all the procedures, like whether he was cultivating the fields and all, this procedure is not followed, and without following it has become ex parte. Judgment is given that he has been made as a tenant. Can we challenge him?
Yes, you can challenge that. The only question which you would have to satisfy is why did you not oppose the application in the first place? And because...
Why didn't you contest the proceedings?
Yes. Why didn't you contest the proceedings in the first place? And secondly, you would also have to look and see what is the basis of the claim, because there are plenty of judgments which have said that when you are claiming a tenancy, you have to establish not only that you are presently cultivating the field, but you have to establish when the tenancy was created, for which property it was created, and by whom it was created.
Now, what is the procedure? We can appeal, no?
Yes, you'll have to file an appeal.
We have to file an appeal.
Yes.
I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next. Okay.
Hello, yeah. I just had a question. A lot of the Comunidad land is agricultural, and I've noticed that there's a lot of land around where I live in Parra where the fields are not being used at all. They're just lying vacant for a long time. So when I started doing farming on my private farm, a few of my neighbors who have Comunidad land have offered, because they're seeing that my land was just barren before, but now it's become like a forest, and a lot of fruit trees and vegetables and all. So they've offered me individually if I can lease their land and use it, because they want it to be used and just lying vacant. Is that possible, and what is the process? Can it be legally leased for 5 years or 10 years or something like that? It's Comunidad and they are the tenants.
I suppose you could apply to the Comunidad for lease of the land in your favor, for cultivation.
Hello.
Yes.
Recently, some Comunidades got together and they have filed the petition to the governor. Suppose we all Comunidad petition to the High Court regarding the illegal houses by migrant workers, regularization of the Comunidad land. Is a good case for us to file in the High Court so that all the Comunidad can take managing committee decision or general body decision? Kindly say.
If you belong to a Comunidad and there are illegal encroachments on your Comunidad land, which the government now wants to regularize by virtue of this new amendment, you can certainly challenge it and get a stay on that process. Yes. In the High Court.
Secondly, for the interim period until you challenge the amendment, you can pass general body resolutions to oppose the regularization, because under this amendment it is the attorney alone who has to give the consent. Attorney alone. So if the general body passes a resolution that will supersede the attorney's authority.
My question is regarding Article 4, which Advocate Jocel brought up as a question. Like considering unmarried daughters, widows, orphans to be considered as members of the comunidad. I see that it's not happening anyway. Also, for the last comunidad convention, the issue of giving rights to the girl daughters of the Gaunkaries, that also was discussed. Can the panelists or anybody enlighten us what is the progress on that front?
I'm not sure about the progress, but I'm sure you can follow it up legally by ensuring that it happens with your respective comunidad. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of how far that has progressed as far as.
Morning. I'm president of Nerul Comunidad, and I would like to know if migrants can buy shares from shareholders, especially rich builders who come, they even pester us, offering huge amounts of money to buy a share in each comunidad. Is it possible?
A share can be bought by anybody. You need not be Goan or a component of any comunidad to be entitled. Like I said earlier, the shares were sold when the comunidad required money. You have to compare it to how a company is. There is no bar for a particular kind of person to buy a share in a company. This is just a much older form than a company selling shares.
Can it be prevented?
Pardon?
Can some amendment be made to prevent this? Because they are eyeing the land for huge construction for building purpose.
So, amendment again is within the domain of the legislature. If the legislature wants, they can amend. The only way a comunidad can protect itself from such a thing is to seek to rebuy the shares back from the shareholders. And that way the comunidad becomes the holder of the share again.
Just one point I would like to make. In the light of Jagpal Singh case, much of this discussion which is taking place in terms of illegalities on comunidad land in particular had already got agitated before the Supreme Court in 2011. I'm sure you are aware about this. And there is a solemn affirmation made before the Supreme Court by the state of Goa, by the Chief Secretary, then Chief Secretary, that all these illegalities would be contained and eventually removed. So, is there no case for any contempt of court against the state for dereliction of its duty?
See, one of the actual grounds of challenge of the actual legislation which has come up for regularization is that you've made a law specifically to go against a Supreme Court judgment, which is not possible. So, in terms purely of contempt, no. But in terms of actual challenge of a law on this basis, that it goes against a well-established judgment, yes. Contempt is only if there is a very specific undertaking, a very specific direction which is given, and it is expressly violated.
Jagpal Singh's judgment
You
is
have the affidavit with you, no? Filed in 2011. Gideon? 2011 affidavit is with you already, I suppose.
Yeah, in 2011, Jagpal Singh's case is very clear that all ancestral lands are to be given back to the ancestral bodies which are there. That's what that judgment says.
No, in the light of the affidavit filed by the state of Goa in the Supreme Court, I would only request you to go through it.
So Nigel, you wanted to add something? Okay.
Let me tell you one thing. I'm a student of law. I've been an activist as a young kid since Father Bismarck was there. Things never worked in our favor for various reasons. Similarly, I don't know if you get this, but the law is a set of words that gives a legal value to some situation, some person, some authority, whatever it is. There are different interpretations of the law. And every interpretation of the law which may be good for a large number of people may not be good for one individual person. So we need to understand how the law also works. Sometimes the legal panel out here speaks to you based on experiences they've had right up to the Supreme Court level. Doesn't mean they are not pro-Gaunkaries. Because when they go to court, they are the ones who are faced with the questions before the judges, not us. So we need to understand from where they come with their legal explanations for your points.
So I think in interest of time, because we've We've actually exceeded a time of 12:30, when was what we were supposed to end. We'll take the last two questions. Maybe we have time for just the last two questions, and we'll end with that.
Okay, hello.
Advocate Nigel, you just said you are unaware of the women's right in this of Comunidad. No? I just wanted to ask, what should we be doing in case it is into the law of Comunidad that women should be given right? And if women are not given a right, what should we be doing about it?
No, so just put it on.
If you're claiming, if one is claiming as a widow of a Gaunkar or Zonkar, and you're not getting your dues, dividends, whatever, because the Komdad is not acting on your application, there's a process by which you can apply to the administrator and then take it forward to the tribunal in appeal. So there's the legal procedure you can follow under the code by challenging the inaction or action of the Komdad on this. So you have to take recourse to your legal remedy under the code.
Now, in terms of actual shareholding, like if you look at the old inventories which are there in the archives, 1920s, 30s, very promptly people used to put the shares of the Comunidad as the assets there also. So not only Gaunkari, even the shares could actually be allotted.
Even shares.
So I don't see that happening now currently in inventories. People are only interested in properties, not in shares of the Comunidad. So Advocate Nigel spoke of actual Gaunkari. I'm speaking about actual shareholding, which I don't see happening and not being put in actual inventories. That is another way you can ensure your rights.
If I may add a little to this, speaking from my personal experience, so my father belongs to the Comunidad of Saligaon, and he passed away in 2021. We are just two sisters, no male heirs. So Jocel will know very well. I went with the Barrett to the Saligaon Comunidad. I read provision 4. I connected everything to them, and I told them, so my mother, who's a widow now, has to get some sustenance, and so also unmarried daughters. The Saligaon Comunidad has, successfully, and thank you to them, they have provided for my mother and my older sister, not me because I'm the younger one. So they told me till your sister's married, she's going to get sustenance, but you won't get. I don't know, maybe I'll have to go again to meet them. I really don't know. But yeah, if we go and we speak, we can definitely start there because some Comunidads are open to understanding. Yes. The last question maybe for the session.
Excuse me, yeah. Hello? Can I?
Someone behind?
Okay.
Yeah? Yes.
After you.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay, my question is about this alienation. You say that it is 100% not inalienable. No? I mean, Comunidad property cannot be alienated. But on the other hand, there is something called perpetual alienation. Perpetual emphyteusis. That is almost like alienation, no? Okay, second aspect is, it appears to me that this clause happens more in violation than in observation. Because I myself live in a Afaraman property in Margaon, Borda. We have made plots and happily sold. And also I was told that in case of sale, a certain percentage has to be paid to the Comunidad. So this is contradictory to the clause of no alienation. And the fourth one is now, if all the properties in a village belong to the Comunidad, how come there are private properties? Where do they come from? Without alienation?
See, I think you're very familiar with the old archives documents that are there. Now, one could transfer the dominio util in terms of Article 1653, 1654 of the Portuguese Civil Code. Now let's look at property practically. One would hold property as an asset, one could fall sick, one could have n number of problems, one would be in debt, whatever. And one would need to transfer it, not alienate it, one would need to transfer it for the purpose of getting out of one's hard times. So back then, as it is now, one could transfer the lease, the perpetual lease to somebody, wide a document, but one would have to specify that we are transferring the lease and not selling out the total rights, which is the wrong steps which are now being taken. Wherein Comunidad property is taken, the 1 and 14 form only is relied on. None of the reference is given to the old documents. And instead of transferring just a lease, full title transfer is being done, which is wrong. Now, if one were to pay the remission fully, and one were to merge those two domains, dominio util and dominio deret, one would still have to say that I'm transferring over the use of the land that has been given to me by the comunidad, which again is not happening.
What about these private properties? Where do they come from? If the whole village belongs to comunidad, unless there was alienation, there cannot be private properties.
See, certain properties were there which originally, let's say for example, the houses which people lived on, which were private properties. Certain fields which were there were originally private properties. They come in Tombasan 2. Tombasan 1 are the properties which are given on emphyteuses, which are lease. And those for which the rent is fully remitted in Tombasan 1, there's a procedure under the Code of Comunidad to transfer them over to Tombasan 2, which is where all those private properties come from. Now, certain comunidades have their maps very well mapped out. Like, for example, Luis was saying that the comunidad of Moira has its map completely full. And they are so confident, in fact, that instead of even DSLR, they have their maps in the central library, if you would have me tell you. So the private properties come from those aspects. One is where the remission is paid. Two is genuine private properties, which one would have to see in the inscription description and the archives. And three is this transfer of like merging both the domains. That is where the private properties in the maps are.
So I partly disagree with my learned colleague's opinion. I don't believe that private properties emerged from paying the complete remissions to the comunidades. So we have to understand that land holdings have traversed many centuries and laws have changed over time. And kings could always claim lands for themselves, unlike the laws today which put certain restrictions upon the state from claiming lands from private holders. Kings had no such restrictions, so they could always claim such lands and grant it to private holders. There could have been, in the beginning itself, private holders who refused to contribute towards the community holding. Because at the end of the day, the formation all depended on the community. So people, how that came, you will have to look specifically at individual cases, the documentation. You can't have a general view for all private holdings.
Yes.
Because also you have to take one thing into consideration, that even when the Portuguese came, the Portuguese confiscated a lot of lands. Such lands were then auctioned off. Granted auction.
Yeah. Hi, just a short question.
Yes, please.
Are there comunidad lands in every village?
Most of the villages have.
Okay, so if you have bought property and you have bought it with proper, proper documents and everything, and it is, they say it is Alvara land, but it has been sold from one party to the other. No mention of a lease, maybe in the previous documents. For many years, then who does it belong to? There's no mention about comunidad, but it's mentioned as originally as Alvara land. So is it now no longer Alvara since it has been sold for so many years? Who's the owner?
If it is Alvara land, it's not Comunidad. It would be Alvara granted by the erstwhile Portuguese government under a decree.
So if it has been sold now?
You have to see the terms and conditions of the decree. Now there's also this, under the Land Revenue Code, if you've been given a grant under an Alvara,
yes.
You can apply to regularize it as a permanent holding. So you'll have to check from the government records, the Land Revenue Department.
It's classified as class 2.
What is the classification? Class 2, then they can't sell it because you can't. You have the right to hold it in perpetuity but subject to restrictions. And those restrictions are normally, you cannot alienate without government permission. But Alvara lands are different from Comunidad lands.
So who is considered the owner in this case?
Government of Goa.
Okay.
Yes.
So, the Code of Comunidad is annexed with 224 village maps. So, these 224 village maps, which are annexed to the code, which is in force, speaks about the land use in each of those maps for each of the villages. For example, there is pastage, there is lotus reservados, and so on. And mostly it's on these lands that all these encroachments and so on have come up. So if that is already a fixed land use for those lands. And basically those lands are there for certain purpose. They are for purpose of being catchment areas which feed the groundwater resources and the groundwater table and so on. This the elderly people knew about. So bringing in new laws which apply to these lands, but these uses of the land are still in force. Can the use of those lands can actually be changed when they are in force and they are meant for a specific purpose? This is one question. Now, just to mention to you, I come from the village of Golti, where we just celebrated a festival yesterday, the famous Bandera festival. Now, the Bandera festival actually is a Kumnidat festival, and it has a very deep-rooted meaning, because the day after the Bandera is the Novidad, and Novidad means the new harvest. That means you got a bountiful harvest, so the previous day you celebrate. And what is the Bandera? Bandera basically is a dance which is done on the boundaries of the village. Because in those days they didn't even have anything which was codified or written down. It was by expression of their dramatic expression. So they went on the boundaries and they danced. And most of these boundaries are all either on the hilltops or there's some kind of religious place and so on and so forth. The tradition still goes on. But unfortunately it is no longer a Kumnidat held function. It is more of a tourist attraction and it is done in a completely different way. But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is that all these brought in certain kind of a revenue, basically because there was so much of agriculture. The 30 lakh square meters of rice fields, which all become mangroves now. So there's no income. Now basically all Kumnidat lands, they have a trinity. One is the land, one is its people, and one is their deity, their god. All these three are one. All these three maintained each other because of the income that came from the land. So this whole thing has been disrupted. So it's kind of a sacrilege. So I'm just wondering whether the use of these lands which were meant for specific purpose and which protected and supported the kind of heritage and cultural ancient belief systems and traditions, whether they can be disrupted by way of laws which are being implemented in the recent times. Thank you.
No, we are taking one last.
Hello. I'm Nelson Fernandez, attorney of Comunidad de Vasagao. I was a member of the panel which organized the Comunidad conference under Article 652. And during this time, hello?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
during this time, we took up this very sensitive issue that, ladies should be introduced in the Comunidad. So I just wanted to give you all this piece of information that the report that we submitted to the government, in that it was very clearly mentioned that the numbers at the Comunidad, at the different Comunidades are dwindling. So we need to introduce the ladies. But the government was, the government was ready. In fact, our Undersecretary, Sandeep Jakes, he said that we are ready. But there were some people in the audience itself, and particularly one person who, made very derogatory remarks, saying that the place of the lady should be in the kitchen. Okay, so I want a general awareness to be created amongst the Comunidades. All the husbands and the sons of the ladies who aspire to be classified as Gaunkaries or specific Comunidades have to first create a ruckus in their house and convince their husbands and their sons to bring it up. Only then this will happen. I truly believe that any change that happens from within. We cannot ever expect it to happen from outside. So I want all the ladies here and all the ladies at home also to go and please convince their husbands that they should somehow bring the ladies inside. We are faced with a reality and an existential issue where our very existence is under cloud now, and for that we have to make sure that our ladies come in. That is our point of view. Comunidad de Vasagao has already started by giving out zone to our ladies and their this thing, but somehow I expect this to take a better turn in the future. Having said that, the second point is that we are citizens of a sovereign democratic republic country. And there is an old school of thought in the Comunidad that the Code of Comunidad existed much before the invasion of Goa that was done by the Indian government to annex Goa into its fold. I want to know that most of this old school of thought says that none of the laws of the Indian Union apply to us because we have our own special separate law, that is the Code of Comunidad. I want the panel to once and for all put this argument to rest that all the land reform, the Agricultural Tenancy Act, the Land Revenue Code, all these, are they applicable to the Comunidades or no? And the answer has to be a very emphatic yes or no, because a whole lot of discussions keep happening on those groups where we are told that, you know, you don't have to respect the panchayat, you don't have to respect the revenue code, the mamledars are ultra virus to the Code of Comunidad. So I want to know what is the reality. Thank you.
First and foremost, we need to clap for the Comunidad of Asagaon for giving importance to ladies and ensuring that they have their rights under the code. I think, madam, you've got your answer there to that question. Now, as far as it's Comunidad of Asagaon, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yes. Yeah. Now, as far as the second question is whether, and this is a debated question, as I said, and learned senior lawyer has raised this challenge multiple times in the High Court, if I'm not mistaken, even in the Supreme Court, and it has been repelled, unfortunately for him. And my answer, now the question is whether the land revenue law, the tenancy laws, etc. would apply to the Comunidades. My answer is emphatically yes, because these are laws brought in by the state government in exercise of its legislative powers given under the Constitution of India. Now, if we are a state bound by the Constitution of India, and these are laws enacted by the state of Goa in exercise of its legislative powers under Articles 245 and 246. In fact, the powers of the state to make laws are prescribed in the 7th schedule in the list 2. And in list 2, laws with regard to land, etc. are given, the powers to enact laws with regard to land, etc. are given to the states. If the state has enacted these laws, everyone is bound by them, including the Comunidades. You can't say the Comunidades are a separate entity altogether and no law would apply to them. That goes against the basic constitutional provision. So therefore, my answer is an emphatic yes, these laws have to apply. And unless your argument is that the Comunidad is in a different state altogether, that can't be accepted, that goes against the constitution.
Yes. Yeah. One last question, please. Check, one. Hello? Hello? Yes. Hello? No, sir, please, 1 minute.
With respect to what Asagaon Comunidad has said also is, there must be a synergy in the application of all laws, be it Comunidad, be it Panchayat, be it agriculture tenancy, be it even the land revenue code. There has to be a synergy in everything. The problem with there being a synergy in terms of actual implementation of the agricultural tenancy is many people with amphitheatered lands have, instead of putting the Comunidad's name as the occupant class 1, have gone and put their own names. Today, many of the Comunidad's lands are being taken away on agricultural tenancy, not because the Comunidad has made party to it, but because private people have illegally gone and put their names, and tenants who were there otherwise as cultivators have now gone and taken them on tenancy without even making the Comunidad party. So yes, the Code of Comunidad and all the other laws will apply to Comunidad's lands itself, but the implementation of those laws in synergy is a problem.
Okay, check, one. I'm the president of Comunidad of Asagaon. Well, I thought that we would discuss about the issue, a very hot and boiling issue of regularization of illegal construction on Comunidad land. But however, this discussion has not taken to my expectation. I just want to know from the experts as to how you will advise us to go about this very important issue which we are facing about regularization of illegal construction. Do you want the Comunidades alone to file a writ petition, or together we should file a writ petition? I want the experts to throw some advice on this, please.
Before I answer that question, I will just go a little deeper into the previous question about whether the laws of tenancy, etc., apply to Komdar lands. Now we have, as I said, in the 7th schedule of the Constitution, 2 lists. List 1 deals with the powers and the items under which the Parliament has the power to enact laws, and List 2 deals with the powers of legislative competence of the states. Now, item number 17 in List 2 speaks of land, that is to say rights in and over land, land tenures including relation of landlord and tenant, and the collection of rents, transfer and alienation of agricultural land, land improvement and agricultural loans, colonization. These are powers with regard to which the state can make laws. So for state, government has made a particular law in exercise of these powers conferred, then that law is binding on everyone, including the Komdars. Now to answer the second question, could you please repeat the question?
Well, we have the very important and a major issue concerning the Komdidats, that is regularization of illegal construction on Komdidat land. How we will go about with this major issue? Do you want the individual Komdidats to file a writ petition, or jointly can we file a writ petition?
It could be either. It could be individual Komdats who are aggrieved, or a number of Komdats together. It's a choice. It doesn't make any difference.
Which is the best option do you have?
Individuals or if it's a number of Komdats together, it has much more strength, right? So that more Komdats are aggrieved by this law.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
I have a small question regarding documents of the Komdat, which are in the archival of the administrator of Central Zone. Most of the documents are not properly maintained. And when we go to see the tomb, it's in shambles. You cannot read. Many times it is that building was dilapidated and water had gone in, and all documents cannot be read. In that there are tomb, planta, auction of the Komdar land. And this is now not possible to locate in the documents. Now how we can go to check those documents? There is any way out?
Okay, if you don't have the tombo, and I've faced this problem in multiple situations, if you don't have the tombo, or the people who've usurped the land have destroyed the tombo, let's take for example, then what you have to do in that situation is, you have to fall back on the old inscription descriptions of the land of the village, piece together the entire land, east, west, north, south, east, west, north, south, recreate the entire picture, and then prove with respect to the land, the plan now there, which land lies where exactly. Because when it comes to civil suits, just the tombo and just the new survey plan are not good enough to prove your title. You have to look at the old inscription descriptions to see whether it is inscribed in favor of the comunidad, or two, if the lands were originally given out by the comunidad, then the files of those are in the actual archives, and at the back of the files generally there is a map which is there, which one can use. But if you cannot find the tombo whatsoever, then you have to fall back on the inscription descriptions.
You are right, sir. I also went to the cadastral plan, the survey department. There also the plan is half there, half not there. So there was some trick between olden times, I think, or I don't know. Some Badkars has mishandled all this. So how to locate that?
Let's say the tombo or the map for that particular location is destroyed. Let's say you cannot find it anymore, or it is torn, it is tattered or whatever. Then you have to find the inscription or description entry on the north saying that you're south, on the south saying you're the north, on the west saying you're the east, and on the east saying you're the west, all for proving that you're in between. That is one method of doing it. And those must be taken, overlaid by a surveyor on the new map, and if there are any natural landforms, like say for example drains, slopes, or different natural landforms or natural barriers there, then one would be able to prove it in terms of that.
Thank you. My second question is regarding Code of Comunidad. the code of Comunidad was translated, I don't know the proper date, but that code and some words in the new Code of Comunidades and Code of Comunidad, words are differ. For example, in that code there was auction. Property was auctioned for a particular period. They said it is lease in the new Code of Comunidades, translation. So, which code we have to follow now? Code of Comunidades was. Yes.
What you have to follow is the current iteration, that is the 61 code.
This code is called.
There were the earlier iterations. There was one of 1904. There was 1933 also.
In that code, it is actually written auction. Auction means for the period of time.
Auction was the process by which the lease was given.
Yes.
Auction is
Yes.
not what was given.
Yes.
So you're either given a lease or you're given an emphyteusis. The process by which it is given is an auction. Even today, when the Comunidad is granting land, it has to do by way of auction.
Certain period.
Auction is the method. It is not what is granted, the method by which it is granted.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, we've, in case you all have any other questions, you all can ask the organizers later and they'll,
We'll have to end the questions.
Yeah, we'll have to
because
end the Q&A.
It just keeps going on. It's very difficult to answer all the questions.
Yeah. Okay, okay. Yes.
Ma'am, come forward because the mic is moving and I cannot.
Thank you. Actually, I attended this session with some hope, which I was not satisfied throughout the session. So at last I want to put forth my points. I don't know how you all can help me out. The very last point which one of my brother he said is regarding translation of Códigos dos Comunidad. This year we have an High Court order in which Vikas Sonu Kandolkar versus State, it was dated 6th August 2025, which says Code of Comunidad, which is there in Portuguese, cannot be translated. I have the order in my hand. So this is one part.
To just answer that part, the Code of Comunidad was officially translated in 2012.
Yeah, but it is
in pursuance to a High Court direction.
Yeah, but
so this
year,
order has not taken that into consideration. This order is irrelevant because the code has already been translated.
Okay, but that we can see here. The second thing is, the second last person who spoke about annexation. In that, I would like to say, as per the Code of Comunidad, it says 223 villages. Now, what has happened in villages like Form 1 and 14 shows part by part the land of Comunidad. And even the village map, which is supposed to be full Comunidad, most of the land is gone as private, right? So that is a big problem. In that, what is happening now is that each and every one of 223 existing Comunidades of Goa is the de facto primary and supreme owner of the territory of its respective village, possessing allodial ownership right down to the center of the earth. So in this, Comunidad being the sole owner of the village is that question. The whole land or the part which is existing at present shown in the Form 1 and 14 records.
So I just want to correct you here. Do not look at Comunidad and reduce it to village. These are revenue villages which you are referring to. Comunidades can either be smaller than the revenue village or much larger than the revenue village. For example, take Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz consists of two Comunidades, which is Kalapur and Kujira. So do not confuse village and Comunidad. They are two separate entities.
So how do we distinguish it when we try to understand our own village?
The question was already answered earlier. First of all, Comunidad is a private holder by itself. Comunidad is not state. So when you're looking at private, it means not state. And as far as other private holdings go, you will have to look at the title of those lands and see whether they were actually private holdings or whether they're comunidad holdings. But the general presumption you can take is that the majority of the land at the very least belongs to the comunidad of that area.
So
another thing is with respect to the actual surveys that have been conducted, the comunidad maps which are there were 2-scale metric maps down to the last detail, last centimeter this come behind people's houses, is to measure drains. It's so well documented, even in terms of the agreements. Small things are mentioned there, and it's down to the last meter or millimeter which their surveys are done. But now, in terms of what my colleague said, in terms of these revenue villages now, that the surveys which are done, they are done by plain table sheets.
Correct.
And plain table sheets are done based on 25 square meter pieces. Now, in the rush to fill up all the plain table sheets for one revenue village, certain areas or certain details have been missed out, or certain areas have been magnified or wrongly stated. Like if you look at wells nowadays, you'll see a 5 by 5 square meter, wherein it may be just 3 meters, or it may be 9 meters, it may be more. So in a plain table sheet survey, it creates errors, whereas comunidad maps, when you find and you try to overlay, there will always be a difference between those.
So in this, there are some findings which have been done, and I'll just read it out to you. The Constitution of India does not foresee the existence of the private comunidad villages of Goa, but only government revenue villages, a Commonwealth concept under British law. So in that case, none of the comunidad villages of Goa are government revenue villages, as they are not held by the respective comunidad by virtue of land grant from any ruler, state or government to claim the state landlordism over the territory belonging to any of the 223 comunidades of Goa, comunidad villages of Goa. Likewise, no citizen in any comunidad village ever held land by grant from any ruler or the state government.
I'll just interrupt you here. What you are speaking right now paramounts to secession, which means you're trying to break away from the state and say the laws of India do not apply to us because
Yes.
we are comunidad.
Because
Wait now, wait. If you try to claim to be a sovereign by yourself, you're doing an illegal act. Because you're
But
trying to say,
how-
I am seceding from the state of India. I'm not a part. I will make my laws by myself.
But then,
You're moving beyond a land owner.
so how is that we are directly taking a comunidad and linking it where there has been no.
You are trying
no,
to say, I will govern myself. No other law will govern me. That is basically what you have said. What a comunidad is a holder of land. Now we can always make the argument to say that originally it was a sovereign within a sovereign.
Yes.
But even then, it was bound by the laws of the superior state. It was functioning as a suzerain. So you are still bound by the laws of the state. You cannot say the constitution doesn't apply to comunidad lands.
Yes.
Even now,
So there is no grant. Now I'll tell you, in addition to that.
Even if I hold land, private land, it is not granted by the state.
Yes.
If it is granted by the state, it is then an alvara. But it doesn't mean that I am not bound by the law of the state. The law of the state shall still apply to you. What you're saying is illegal.
So
it's contrary to law.
Yes, exactly. This is what we have to understand. Why? Because now see, now in Parliament's assembly session, people are demanding for Pogo bill. Now see, how do we define Goans? The Gaunkaries of Goa are the Goans original,
I'll tell you one
which
thing.
becomes a contrary.
I'll take that argument even further because the original Goans are not even the Gaunkaries which are sitting in this room. If we go to that argument, it is endless. And all of us will also have to leave this state. So we can't go into that argument. This is not the forum to go into that argument. What they're trying to do in that is not good. Protect your comunidad and you will protect the state.
So in that, to protect our comunidad, we are already an independent body. So then Revenue Code is trying to dilute everything. And the people who are there as a migrant are claiming ownership.
See, laws function in different spheres. Do not try to overlap them where they do not overlap. You must first understand how the laws function, what are their particular roles. And only then can you say that they dilute. The Code of Comunidades is merely for the administration purposes of the comunidades. Land revenue codes traverses far beyond just comunidades. There are many more things in the state than comunidades alone. So we cannot say that it dilutes or does anything. We need lands for the general public to follow, laws for the general public to follow. We can't just say do away because we have comunidades.
But then who are the general public?
Now what if you look at Satari and all, where the Ranes control the talukas? The Ranes decimated the comunidades. So there are no comunidades there today. At least majority of the comunidades are gone. So what do you do there?
So how do we fight this battle? The battle is that itself. Because until and unless we don't fight this, our identity is gone. Now the migrant who is coming and settling in Goa says, I have all the document. He says that I'm the Gaunkaries.
Now the government...
And that's what they're demanding.
The government is able to do what it's doing with regard to regularization because comunidades have slept over their rights for decades. If the comunidades were vigilant and took action at the appropriate time, the government would not have been in a position to make such a law.
So we need to fight it now. It's
You
high
need to
time.
start
Yes, we are
fighting
ready. We are ready. If you all support us, we are ready to get this done.
Our very presence here shows that we support this cause.
No, we've actually run out of time, sir. Actually run out of time, and we need to wind up. We need to wind up. Yes, thank you for your suggestion on that. So with this we come to the end of our Q&A session, which went way beyond time, sorry for that. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to sincerely thank our panelists for sharing their knowledge, insights and expertise on the Code of Comunidades with us.
Please don't leave the room. Please don't leave the room. I request everyone to just be where you are. We're ending this in about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Please don't leave the room.
Your perspectives have not only deepened our understanding, but have also reminded us of the continuing importance of comunidades in Goa's legal and cultural fabric. Thank you once again, sirs, for your time and for your very valuable thoughts. It was a privilege, a pleasure to learn from you all and moderate this session. Thank you.
Before we end the session, there is a vote of thanks, but before that, based on all the discussions we've had, I'd just like to discuss one very short perspective. Now, very recently, there was this bill which is being proposed, regularization of illegal structures, correct? I'm sure all of you all disagree with it, correct, right? But how many such people, if a protest will be held tomorrow, can we have the numbers to show our strength before the government? We're a population of 16 lakh in Goa, more or less, out of which nearly 8.5 lakh or more are Goans. But how many of those people do come on the ground? Because the way the last questions were being put forth, looks like we're doing nothing. But whenever such protests are being held, nobody comes. It's a handful of people, 100, 200, 300, the government sits and laughs. But when we have such forums, the questions being asked are so direct and blunt. That's where one of our fellow colleagues said the feeling should come from within. And I'm saying this as a youngster because I've been for protests like these. I've been with national parties where I wanted to bring up issues as near as the Comunidad level and things like that, which don't happen because we don't have our numbers in place. Now, the moment you have your numbers, you start educating your fellow Gaunkaries, even the court takes cognizance of it. If you'll know, there was a recent Supreme Court judgment on stray dogs in Delhi. There was a lot of uproar about it. Now there's a slight change in the judgment in favor of those who are not in favor of the judgment. So numbers do matter. And this is a time when we need to wake up. You see, the name out there is United Gaunkaries for a reason. So all we ask at the end of this session is also take the concept of unity with you along with knowledge. And Jocel will now. Okay. We have the president of Karamboli Comunidad who would like to share a few words with you all, and after that you all may leave.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, आज जे ये सेशन जाला Monsoon Fellowship. So ये fellowship जे आज जाला ये आमी सगळ्यांकूय माहिती दिवपाची आज ये वर्कशॉप अशें. Among everyone, I had the privilege, and I have the privilege of being in the assembly, being the MLA from Benaulim, and also holding the president of Karamboli, being the president of Karamboli. So, here is bill, 39, bill number 39, which has been introduced. It is an illegal way of trying to regularize the houses that are there on Kumdad lands, that we all have seen. And now the next step is all we have to be united. These numbers has to be made 1,000 times. And not only by coming and saying that if we all unite, it is time to unite, it is time to meet the advocates and give your representation, collect the necessary funds. Let's not wait that we will put a budget in the Kumdad budget and the administrator will approve that budget to appoint an advocate to fight this case. तू समजलो न्हू कितें सांगता budget जरी तर गायले आनी administrator approve करतलो budget to finalize and fight this case. म्हणजे तू government कडेन approval मागता administrator कडेन की तेंचेरी झगडपाक. So we'll have to create our own budget if we have the love for the land which we all have, and together come and fight so that once the governor gives his assent, the government of Goa, the chief minister has said from the 15th of September, he's going to start to regularize the houses that are there. And he's going to starting this process, which means before that, the government is going to give their assent. And once the government gives their assent, we should together come, ensure from assent to execution, there is a stay and we fight this matter out. I think unity is only going to be the message out. All of you all came here, thank you very much. But coming here, clapping is not the solution. We have to stop the buck. We have to win this matter. If we win this matter, then we are here to protect our lands, and that's all we say. I'm doing my bit. Let us all do our bit. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We are done for today. You all may disperse. Deo bore koru. Oh, sorry. Okay. There's a last vote of thanks that Jocel would like to give.
Thank you everyone for coming. It looks like you are more hungry for comunidades than food. So thank you all for your patience. We would like to say thank you to all the resource persons, the dignitaries, the contributors, donors, vendors, volunteers, and especially the participants for being civil today. Thank you to all the Gaunkaries and shareholders, components who have kept the movement going and the hope for justice alive all these past years and decades fighting for our indigenous rights. Thank you to the management of Xavier Center for Historical Research who have opened the doors to us and our cause and generously given us the use of the premises. It's a very spacious place and I urge you to patronize this venue for your private events. The funds we have received as contributions and donations are strictly used mainly on the direct expenses for this event, that is catering, sound, artwork, design, printing and stationery. The current bank account used to receive funds was specially opened for activities organized by the United Gaunkaries group. Until such a time the society or trust is established, the account statement will be available to all our donors and contributors. The income and expenditure will also be made available shortly. Apart from that, most of the resource persons and the organizing teams have completely volunteered their services, if not also contributed via the registration amount or donated. Our plan is to organize fellowships on a regular basis at least once every quarter so that we can consistently and progressively build a fraternal community spirit among the Gaunkar, shareholders, components and well-wishers across Goa. We have plans to commemorate Foral the Afonso Mexia Day on 16th of September, which will be a social and cultural event where we will keep you posted. You are welcome with your families and we are looking forward to your generosity to meet the costs. We also plan to launch and publish a website on the Gaunkaries system containing knowledge, news and resources that will be simplified even for the younger generation of newly initiated Gaunkars. We have narrowed down the basic website cost to be only about 25,000 rupees to 30,000 rupees per year, as we mainly have to bear the domain hosting and editorial expenses, and the remaining costs will be handled by our in-house volunteers. Also, anyone who is experienced in this line or interested in sharing their talents for this cause is welcome to join the team for designing or compiling the information for the website. As I close, I want to share a personal reflection on the current state of our comunidades and the simple path ahead. What we face is not just an injustice, it's a quiet abandonment. It looks like we are being left behind by our family members for greener pastures abroad, our friends, our neighbors, our government, even our ancestral legacy. Not merely because we pull each other down, but because we haven't done enough to lift one another up. True community is built not on competition, but on unity despite the diversity. And as youth, we long to see that spirit of togetherness reflected in both our elders as well as our peers. In comunidad or community, let there be more of we and less of I. Because when we choose isolation over collaboration, we stunt our own growth, and we've prolonged it for too long. Still, if you feel stuck, if growth seems out of reach, I urge you, grow in spirit. That door is always open, and through it, you may find the strength to rise, not alone, but together. And we need more of that. Thank you.
देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव माय देस आमी राखताव देवाचे कायदे आमी पाळटाव माय देस आमी राखताव